Chapter 1298. The moon-worshipping cult holy girl could guess that Yi Xiaonan and others would find a way to save her when she was in trouble. But she didn't expect that the person who saved her would be Chu Xiu. In fact, although the moon-worshipping cult holy girl and Chu Xiu had a friendship, this friendship was not too deep. Moreover, since Chu Xiu rebuilt the Kunlun devil cult in Kunlun Mountain, the two sides were no longer on the same level. At this time, seeing that it was actually Chu Xiu who made a move, she still felt a little complicated. Don't just stand there, quickly accept the inheritance power in longevity Gu. Otherwise, if it is wasted, you will have experienced such a dangerous situation in vain. Hearing this, the moon-worshipping cult holy girl quickly calmed down and began to absorb the power in longevity Gu. After the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet removed all the imprints in the longevity Gu, the aura of the moon-worshipping cult holy girl also began to skyrocket. The moon-worshipping cult holy girl was a martial artist of the same era as Chu Xiu. The martial artists of that era, not including monsters like Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian, had already stepped into the true fire spiritual refinement realm. Even those ranked in the top dozens on the Longhu list had already stepped into the real pellet state, becoming the mainstay of various sections. The strength of the moon-worshipping cult holy girl could definitely be ranked in the top 10, but she had always maintained the realm of unity of man and nature. From then on, Chu Xiu felt something was wrong. At this time, the aura of the moon-worshipping cult holy girl skyrocketed from the unity of man and nature to the real pellet state, true fire spiritual refinement realm, and even to the heaven and earth mystic connecting realm before stopping. Moreover, the aura on her body was not weak at all. Instead, it was extremely stable as if she had been in this realm for a long time. This was the effect of the longevity Gu. It was indeed miraculous. While inheriting strength and martial path, it could even inherit the comprehension of realms. However, the martial artists of the heaven and earth mystic connecting realm, such as the high priest and Donghuang Tai, saw the cultivation of the moon-worshipping cult holy girl rising to the same level as them in an instant. Their expressions didn't change. This kind of thing was not enviable. After being consumed by longevity Gu, the holy girl of each generation could not live more than 100 years old, and some even died at the age of a few decades. They would rather cultivate hard in exchange for the strength of the heaven and earth mystic connecting realm. After a long while, the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult opened her eyes. She stretched out her hand, and in her hand was a round black insect. Chu Xiu couldn't see its head or tail, and if it weren't for the fact that it was still trembling, he would have thought it was dead. This seemingly inconspicuous thing was the longevity Gu that created so many generations of moon-worshipping cult saintess. Yi Xiaonan flicked her finger and powerful astral qi instantly shattered that longevity Gu. Donghuang Tai and the sect-worshipping saint. Yi Xiaonan said plainly, "From today onwards, my moon-worshipping cult will no longer need longevity Gu. Saintess, write down all the Gu techniques in your inheritance and store them in the scripture pavilion." The holy girl nodded, "Yes, sect master." With that, the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping church bowed to Chu Xiu and said with a smile, "Thank you for your help, sect master Chu." Moon-worshipping cult saintess was a heavenly beauty to begin with. After receiving the longevity Gu inheritance, her temperament changed even more. She became spirited and charming, like a fairy born from Miaozhang's myriad mountains, charming but not evil. Chu Xiu said, "Don't thank me yet, I have a price for saving you. Cult Master Yi also agreed to it just now. After I save you, you have to do something for me in the future." The holy girl showed a charming smile and looked at Chu Xiu coquettishly. "Cult Master Chu saved me. Not to mention one thing, I can do 10 things for you. I will do whatever Cult Master Chu wants me to do." Donghuang Tai was a little old-fashioned and couldn't stand the saintess of moon-worshipping cult the most. He couldn't help but cough and frown. "Pay attention to your image. Cult Master Chu is here. Don't embarrass my moon-worshipping cult." The saintess of the moon-worshipping cult immediately put away her flirtatious look. She put her hands on her waist, raised her eyebrows at Dong Huangtai, and said, "Cult leader Chu didn't say anything, so how dare you make irresponsible remarks here? Besides, don't all men like this? Now I am the same as you, I have stepped into heaven and earth elemental opening. If you are not convinced, let's go outside and practice." In moon-worshipping cult, the holy girl's position has always been above the 9 great magi. Provoked by her, Dong Huangtai said angrily, enough." Yi Xiaonan shouted in a low voice, and suddenly everyone was well-behaved, shrinking to the side. Yi Xiaonan rubbed her head, seeming to have a headache. "Excuse me." Chu Xiu smiled. "It seems that people in moon-worshipping cult are also sentimental people, it's no big deal. Since this is the case, I am going to leave. I still have people to visit in West Chu." Moon-worshipping cult saintess asked, "Where is Lord Chu going?" Chu Xiu looked to the west and said lightly, "To the Taoist master's mansion, to visit the old Taoist master." Outside the Taoist master's mansion, when the people heard that Chu Xiu had come to visit, they all panicked. It was no wonder that the Taoist master's mansion was in such a state. It was just that Chu Xiu's deterrence was a bit too great. After the destruction of the Storm Sword Tomb, everyone in the Jianghu knew that Chu Xiu had taken the last step and surpassed the peak of heaven and earth elemental enlightenment. Most cultivators didn't know that there were 9 heavens of martial immortal. In their opinion, Chu Xiu was on the same level as Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago, so everyone was in a constant state of anxiety. As a righteous sect, they didn't know why Chu Xiu had come here, but it was definitely not something good. Seeing everyone's panicked appearance, the old Taoist master couldn't help but scold, "You cowards, what are you panicking for? No matter what, I have lived for hundreds of years. How can Chu Xiu, the leader of a demonic sect, put down his face to bully an old man like me? Go, invite him up. Don't be rude." Zhang Qungjun carefully glanced at the old Taoist master. Why does the old Taoist master's words sound like he's taking advantage of his seniority? This time, the old Taoist master didn't receive Chu Xiu in the courtyard at the back of the mountain, but in the main hall of the celestial master mansion. Chu Xiu walked into the hall with a smile on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Old Taoist master, it's been a long time. You're still as healthy as ever. It looks like living another 100 or 200 years won't be a problem." The old Taoist master shook his head and said, "I'm afraid I'll be struck by lightning even if I live another 100 or 200 years. Who knows when I'll die? After living for so many years, I've already accepted it." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Is that so? If you become a martial immortal, it won't be difficult for you to live another 100 or 200 years, right?" Chu Xiu's words made the old Taoist master tremble. He said in surprise, "What did you say?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "In the past, I was too weak to see through you, old Taoist master. But in truth, you've been a genius since you were young. You've been at the peak of the profound understanding realm for over 100 years, so why haven't you become a martial immortal? I know it's not that easy to break through the martial immortal realm, but with your strength and the power of the entire celestial master mansion, it shouldn't be difficult for you to find a natural treasure and use it as an opportunity, right? After all these years, I can only see through a portion of the power you've accumulated. I can't even see through the rest. If you want to become a martial immortal now, you should be able to do so. But why not?" Even the others from the celestial master mansion looked at the old Taoist master after hearing Chu Xiu's words. They didn't know the old Taoist master had such strength. The old Taoist master sighed and pointed to himself. "Cult Master Chu, you're actually very enviable. Young people are always enviable. I'm already a person from the previous era. So what if I've lived longer? I'm still just an old man. You're right. I've actually already accumulated enough power over 100 years ago. I already had the opportunity and comprehension to become a martial immortal. But, I didn't dare to do so. Cult Master Chu, since you've become a martial immortal, you should know how intense the natural energy is when you make a breakthrough to the martial immortal realm. When the natural energy from the outside world surges into my body, the natural energy in my body will affect the laws of the world, causing my body and soul to be rejuvenated. I can no longer withstand the impact. What a pity. I could have done it several decades earlier, but by the time I had the ability to do so, my body couldn't allow it anymore. Perhaps, when I really can't take it anymore, I'll attempt to make a breakthrough. Even if I can only experience the feeling of becoming a martial immortal for an instant, it'll be worth it. Although the old Taoist master sounded a little regretful, he had already gotten over it after so many years. At the same time, there was also a hint of threat in his words. Although he would never be able to make a breakthrough to the martial immortal realm in his lifetime, if he was forced into a corner, he would be able to unleash the battle prowess of a martial immortal even if his body couldn't withstand it. Chu Xiu said with a deep voice, "Old Taoist master, you're wrong. The most important aspect of becoming a martial immortal is your ability to comprehend the power of laws. As for the impact to your body when you reach the martial immortal realm, although there will be some, if you find a place with an abundance of essence and only absorb the powerful essence to cleanse your body, and use the power within your body to activate the laws, you will not cleanse your body, but rather use it to guide the flow of energy. With that, as long as your body hasn't completely decayed, you will be able to endure it." The old Taoist master forced a smile and said, "You make it sound simple, but where can I find such a blessed land in the pugilistic world? At any rate, I've never heard of any place with such an abundance of natural energy." "There is." "Where?" "The heavenly gates." Chu Xiu did not continue to keep the old Taoist master in suspense. He simply repeated what he had told Yi Xiaonan to the old Taoist master. The Celestial Master's mansion was established earlier than the moon-worshipping church. As such, they knew more about the Daoist secrets than the moon-worshipping church. Most importantly, Yi Xiaonan had become a martial immortal, whereas the old Taoist master had been stuck at that bottleneck for over 100 years. The impact he had received was even greater than Yi Xiaonan. Chapter 1299. Although the old Celestial Master's expression didn't change much after hearing about Chu Xiu's news, it took him a long time to digest it. The old Celestial Master heaved a sigh of relief and said, "So you're going to join forces with the Celestial Master Abode to attack the Heavenly Gate?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. Of course, it's not just the Celestial Master Abode. I just left the moon-worshipping cult. I'm going to mobilize the entire pugilistic world this time. Therefore, I came to deliver this news to you in hopes that the Celestial Master Abode can restrain themselves during this period. If I want to mobilize the entire pugilistic world, my methods may not be so gentle. When the time comes, someone might come to the Celestial Master Abode and ask them to stand up for me." Chu Xiu chose to personally visit the moon-worshipping cult and the Celestial Master Abode not only because of Yi Xiaonan and the old Celestial Master's strength, but also because there were not many forces in the lower realm that could truly threaten him. The North and South Buddhist sects had been destroyed. Chu Xiu didn't care about the remaining remnants. The only ones left were the Devil Dao's moon-worshipping cult and the Taoism Celestial Master Abode. Therefore, Chu Xiu went to them first to ensure his sincerity and also to avoid trouble. The old Celestial Master heaved a sigh of relief and said, "But I still have one thing that I'm very confused about. According to what you said, as long as the Heavenly Gate is breached, the Daoist's power will seep into the lower realm. We can all benefit from it. What can you, Cult Master Chu, get? To put it bluntly, you, Cult Master Chu, have never been a charitable person." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "I only want two things. The first is the collection that the Heavenly Gate has accumulated over the years. I want all of them. I was the one who planned to attack the Heavenly Gate, so I'm not going to give these things to others. The second is Jun Wuxian's life. Old Celestial Master, you should know that I was plotted against in the rift created by the battle between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. I almost died there. Old Celestial Master, you should be able to guess who the culprit was. The old Celestial Master nodded. He was not the only one who knew. Back then, many people had guessed that it was Jun Wuxian who did it. Other than him, no one else had the ability or reason to do so. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Old Heavenly Master, I attacked the Heavenly Gate for personal gain and personal grudges, but it was also beneficial to the entire pugilistic world. The Heavenly Gates had blocked the seal of the upper and lower realms for so many years, and they had used the benefits to create many powerhouses. You only know that Elysium has 9 divine generals, and the weakest is at the true fire god refinement state, but do you know that Elysium also has a secret realm where disciples are secretly trained? The weakest among them is at the real pellet state. For so many years, the Elysium had been like raising venomous insects, allowing them to fight among themselves. The 9 great divine generals were the best among them. Do you know how many children in the world have gone missing, far away from their parents? Moreover, when the people of Elysium went out to look for the heavenly key, they would easily destroy their families. Their methods were cruel, and their crimes were innumerable. The great hero Chu Kuanga, whom I respected the most in the past, died in the hands of the Elysium's divine generals. The former chief hall master of the Guanzhong torture room, Guan Siyu, who cultivated me, also died in the hands of the Elysium's divine generals. If the Elysium is not eliminated, the evil in the pugilistic world will not be eliminated. Old Celestial Master, join forces with me to eliminate the Elysium, and at the same time, get rid of the evil in the pugilistic world." Chu Xiu's words were righteous, and his whole body seemed to be blooming with light. However, many of the martial artists of the Celestial Master Mansion present were speechless. Who in the entire pugilistic world didn't know who Chu Xiu, Cult Master Chu, was? The person the cult master of a cult respected the most was the great hero Chu Kuanga? What a joke. Moreover, everyone knew that Chu Xiu was already at odds with Guan Siyu when they were in the Guanzhong torture room. After Guan Siyu's death, he even more wantonly eliminated dissidents and occupied the Guanzhong torture room with extremely forceful methods. At that time, no one could see that Chu Xiu respected Guan Siyu in the slightest. However, although they didn't believe Chu Xiu's words, they had vaguely heard about the Elysium. The Elysium was not a demon, but the things they did were still intolerable to the righteous in pugilistic world. Of course, even if they couldn't tolerate it before, they still had to. Otherwise, even if Jun Wuxian didn't appear, if the 9 great divine generals of Elysium attacked at the same time, how many people in pugilistic world could stop them? The old Celestial Master heaved a sigh of relief and said, "When are you going to attack the Elysium? Just give the Celestial Master Mansion a message. After you leave, the Celestial Master Mansion will seal the mountain and won't see anyone." A smile appeared at the corner of Chu Xiu's mouth. He knew that the old Celestial Master had agreed. Chu Xiu cupped his fist and said, "Old Celestial Master, please rest assured that I only came to destroy the Elysium this time. For the interests of other sects, as long as they don't block my way, I won't touch them." After speaking, Chu Xiu suddenly looked at Zhang Qingzhen next to the old Celestial Master. "Brother Zhang, why do you people always like to play the trick of accumulating? Isn't it good to cultivate step by step?" Among the Longhu list of Chu Xiu's generation, Zhang Qingzhen was the first to step into the real pellet state, and he was also the most dazzling young talent in that generation. But later, with the rise of Chu Xiu and others, the name of Zhang Qingzhen was gradually forgotten. It was just that with Zhang Qingzhen's talent, he had been cultivating hard in the Celestial Master Mansion for so many years, but he was still only at the real pellet state. This was obviously wrong. In the past, Chu Xiu couldn't see anything, but now he could clearly feel that Zhang Qingzhen's body contained an extremely strong thunderbolt power, especially in his dantian. Chu Xiu could no longer detect the existence of martial Dao real pellet. Instead, it was replaced by a powerful thunderbolt. Zhang Qingzhen smiled when he heard the words, "Brother Chu, I can't catch up with you, so I can only take some shortcuts. The big road leads to the sky, but there are too many people. The shortcuts can also lead to the peak. It feels good. Chu Xiu nodded and said, Brother Zhang is bold. You and the Holy Virgin of the Moon-worshipping cult are very compatible. Old Celestial Master, Brother Zhang, then I will leave. After speaking, Chu Xiu turned and left, leaving only Zhang Qingzhen feeling a little confused. What does the Holy Virgin of the Moon-worshipping cult have to do with him? Looking at Chu Xiu's back as he left, the old Celestial Master couldn't help but sigh, I'm afraid the pugilistic world is going to be chaotic again. But then again, when was the pugilistic world truly peaceful? Perhaps this is the real pugilistic world. Go and notify them to seal the mountain. Seal the front and back mountains. Tell those who come to pray and burn incense to come again in a few months. During this period of time, the Celestial Master Mansion will not see anyone. After returning to the Daoist continent, he had been busy in the lower realm for a long time. The other Daoist Celestial Masters had all come out of seclusion. Among them, only Lu Jianghe had successfully stepped into the half-step martial immortal realm because he had witnessed the evolution of the power of rules. Although Shang Tianliang's harvest was not small, he was still unable to break through the bottleneck of the martial immortal realm. However, he was only a step away. Although Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian's strength had greatly increased, they were still unable to reach the half-step martial immortal realm. After everyone came out of their seclusion, Chu Xiu informed them about what had happened. Immediately, they all opened their eyes wide. They had only been in closed-door training for less than 2 months. Yet, Chu Xiu had actually managed to rope Qinqing Di to his side. That said, this was also a good thing. After all, Qinqing Di's strength spoke for itself. Furthermore, he also had the World Alliance with him. Wei Shuya pinched the strand of beard on his chin. With a deep voice, he said, in other words, we can attack the heavenly gates now? Chu Xiu nodded. He said, we can. However, I do not wish to lose too many of my subordinates. After attacking the heavenly gates, as long as I take away the extreme yang source energy from the heavenly gates, the spirit formation will definitely loosen up. At that time, the natural energy that will seep out will benefit the entire pugilistic world. Since that's the case, we cannot just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. I have already contacted the moon-worshipping church and the Celestial Master's mansion. They will act. At the same time, I will also contact the wind-sweeping pavilion and have them spread rumors. They will instigate a large number of loose cultivators and small sects to act. Wei Shuya said solemnly, but it's only a few small sections. Most of the other sects value stability more than anything else. Even if you pass the news to them, they most likely won't respond. After all, they will benefit from you attacking the heavenly gates. If you fail, they will not be harmed. If they participate, the risk will be the greatest. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, thus, it is not a good thing to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. I plan to send my subordinates to West Chu, Eastern Qi, Northern Yan and even overseas. I want them to gather their forces and attack the heavenly gates. Those that are obedient will join the alliance. As for those that are disobedient, you can do as you see fit. In any case, I'll leave them to you. In the entire pugilistic world, only the moon-worshipping church and the Celestial Master's mansion could attract Chu Xiu's attention. Therefore, Chu Xiu had personally visited these 2 sections. As for the remaining sects, if Chu Xiu visited them personally, it would be looking down on them too much. Looking at the people around him, Chu Xiu made a decision. Mei Qinglian would go to Northern Yan, Chu Wuji would go to West Chu, Lu Jianghe would go to Eastern Qi, and Lu Fengxian would go overseas. Lu Jianghe could not help but curl his lips and say, Great cult leader Chu, you are going a little too far. You are leaving the hardest bone to chew to me? Actually, Chu Xiu had considered this. Old Wei and Shang Tianliang were too strong. It would be a waste to let them go, so there was no need. The Northern Yan was Chu Xiu's base camp. The forces that were presentable were either on Chu Xiu's side or had been destroyed. Therefore, it was not difficult for Mei Qinglian to go. It was almost the same for West Chu. The strongest sects, the moon-worshipping church and the celestial master's mansion, had been dealt with by Chu Xiu. The others were not difficult. Only Eastern Qi had the most sects and was the strongest. Therefore, it was left to Lu Jianghe, who was the strongest, had the heaviest killing intent, and was also the most experienced. Actually, LV Fengxian's strength was not bad, but LV Fengxian was too amiable in the way he handled matters. Chu Xiu was afraid that he would not be able to control the situation, so he asked him to go to the overseas region to inform them. The people overseas had basically been killed by Chu Xiu, so there would not be any trouble. Chu Xiu was too lazy to explain to Lu Jianghe. He waved his hand and said, "You are going to become one of the 4 demon sovereigns. If I give you a simple task, wouldn't I be looking down on you?" Lu Jianghe scratched his chin. Although he felt that something was wrong, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "That is reasonable." Chapter 1300. Inside the Eastern Qi's wind-sweeping tower. Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli looked at the news sent by the Kunlun devil cult. They were dumbfounded. Qi Yuanli asked doubtfully, "Tower Master, is this news reliable?" Fang Fifan stared at him. "How would I know? This news is so bizarre. It's related to the Divine Gate and the ancient catastrophe that happened 10,000 years ago. No matter how I look at it, it seems like a legend." Qi Yuanli frowned and said, "I think it's a legend too. But the problem is that the Kunlun devil cult wants us to spread this news. The news that wind-sweeping tower sent out must be accurate." Fang Fifan sighed, "Order all of the wind-sweeping pavilion's branches to spread the news. Who cares if it's accurate or not? Who cares if it's a legend? Since it's that person's wish, can we still refute it?" Although Wind-Sweeping Tower was known as the world's #1 news agency and all of their news was absolutely true, in reality, they had done more than 1 or 2 things that were fence-sitters. 500 years ago, when the Kunlun devil cult dominated the world, they had sold secret information about the righteous sects to the Kunlun devil cult. And after the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, they had sold some information about the Kunlun devil cult to the righteous sections. Now that the Kunlun devil cult had made a comeback, Chu Xiu's fist was the strongest. What else could they do other than follow his orders? With Wind-Sweeping Tower's ability to gather information, this news had spread throughout the entire Jianghu in less than 7 days, causing a huge uproar. If this news had come from someone else's mouth, they would definitely have taken it as a joke. But now, it was Wind-Sweeping Tower who said this. It had to be said that Wind-Sweeping Tower's intelligence was still highly trusted by the ordinary people in the Jianghu. Although it seemed bizarre when it came from their mouth, there were still people who were willing to believe it. Of course, most people were still skeptical. Therefore, it was up to Chu Xiu's subordinates to deal with those who were skeptical. In the northern Yan city of Yanjing, Mei Qinglian had sent out invitations in the name of the Kunlun devil cult, inviting the various sects in the northern Yan region to attend the meeting. However, no one dared to ignore an invitation from the Kunlun devil cult, and no one dared to reject it. The northern Yan martial world was where Chu Xiu first developed his influence, and the northern Yan imperial court had a close relationship with Chu Xiu. Therefore, among the 3 countries, the pressure on the northern Yan was the lowest. When the people from the major forces arrived, they were surprised to find that the person in charge was not Chu Xiu, but a beautiful woman in red, who was sitting lazily on the main seat. The martial artists of the northern Yan forces carefully communicated with each other through telepathy. One of them asked in a low voice, "Cult Master Chu didn't come? Old Master Wei Shuya didn't come either, but the Kunlun devil cult sent a woman. What is the meaning of this? Hey, don't look down on this woman. She has a powerful background. The Holy Maiden of the Yin Demon sect, a great demonic sect in the past, the successor of the Red Lotus demon venerable from 500 years ago, and the trusted aid of the demon sect master, Chu Xiu. Wasn't she powerful enough? Look at the people around her. They don't come with good intentions. Be careful. Hearing this, everyone noticed the people around Mei Qinglian. The leader of the giant spirit gang, one of the 6 major gangs, Shen Feiying, was the #1 lackey of the Kunlun devil cult in the northern Yan. He was talking to Mei Qinglian with a straight face. He didn't have the imposing manner of a gang leader or his usual sinister and ruthless demeanor. His attitude was as low as a dog's. Of course, this was normal for Shen Feiying. His attitude towards Mei Qinglian was even lower than his attitude towards Chu Xiu. The cult master Chu was a man of great talent and vision. As long as he got things done, he would be fine. However, women were different. They were very narrow-minded, so he had to serve them carefully. Otherwise, he would be in trouble if he whispered something into the ears of the cult master Chu. On the other side of Mei Qinglian was Bai Wuji, the new city lord of the northern floating snow city. He was an elite of the same generation as Chu Xiu. When the northern floating snow city was destroyed, he sought refuge with the Kunlun devil cult. The northern floating snow city became a vassal of the Kunlun devil cult. Although his attitude wasn't as humble as Shen Feiying's, he still followed the orders of the Kunlun devil cult. On the other side was a martial artist wearing radiant armor. He was slumped on a chair and peeling bananas. After peeling, he handed one to Mei Qinglian and asked, "Do you want one?" Zhuang. "Oh, it's useless to you, but it's delicious." Mei Qinglian glared at him. He took back the banana and took a bite. "Tsk, you don't know what's good for you." Most people in Jianghu didn't know this person, but some people knew that he was the newly appointed general of the northern Yan, Xiang Wu, the most outstanding figure in the Xiang royal family. At this time, he was also sitting here. It could be imagined what the attitude of the northern Yan imperial court was. Of course, what was more frightening was the row of Kunlun devil cult martial artists in black standing behind Mei Qinglian. There were more than a dozen of them, and all of them were at the real pellet state. Everyone present muttered in their hearts. When did the real pellet state martial Dao master become so worthless? They could only stand behind as guards. Mei Qinglian clapped her hands lightly, and the originally noisy hall suddenly quieted down. "I'm sure everyone knows why I've invited everyone here today. The existence of Elysium hinders the development of Jianghu and ignores the rules of Jianghu. It's really evil. Today, my holy cult will take the lead and unite the world of Jianghu. Everyone, please do your best." Mei Qinglian's beautiful eyes glanced at the people present, and she said lightly, "If you don't have the strength, why are you still in Jianghu? Go home and coax your children." There was a commotion in the crowd. Obviously, they were a little dissatisfied with Mei Qinglian's overbearing words. Glancing at the people present, as Mei Qinglian's gaze swept across, the hall suddenly became quiet again. "Okay, that's all I want to say. My eloquence is not as good as my holy cult's cult master Chu. I have brought the news. If everyone has no objections, then wait for my holy cult's news and be ready to attack Elysium at any time. Now, who has any objections?" At this time, a tall and burly martial artist with 3 strands of long beard stood up and said in a deep voice, "I have another question. Kunlun devil cult is powerful. If they ask us to take action, we don't dare to refute. But if we can take action, what benefits can we get afterward? Elysium, as one of the 2 heavens, has countless treasures. How to distribute these things, there should be a rule, right? Also, sir, what is your position in Kunlun devil cult? Why don't I see cult master Chu? Is your promise still valid, my lord?" Everyone present had a look of surprise in their eyes. This person really dared to speak. However, what he wanted to ask was actually what they wanted to know. Now that Kunlun devil cult was powerful in the pugilistic world, they no longer cared about the so-called good and evil. They would listen to whoever's fist was bigger. But the problem was, they could listen to him, but what benefits would they get? Mei Qinglian glanced at him and asked, "Who is this guy?" Shen Feiying immediately went forward and said quickly, "One of the 6 major gangs, the Changel gang's leader, heart-destroying Iron Hand, Yu Fengwei. 1.5 years ago, he officially became one of the 6 major gangs and replaced the Morale congregation." Mei Qinglian nodded her head. In the next moment, she snapped her fingers and a scarlet flame bloomed from Yu Fengwei's body. It was as if a red lotus had bloomed. It was incomparably bright. Yu Fengwei only had time to let out a blood-curdling scream before his entire body was burnt to ashes. The entire place was deathly silent, and everyone's eyes were filled with shock and terror. No one would have thought that this seemingly beautiful woman would kill someone without any warning. Moreover, they could not understand the power of the Red Lotus hellfire. Mei Qinglian's beautiful eyes revealed a hint of anger. She said coldly, "Reckless fools, I'm just asking you symbolically. How dare you stand up and question me? I'll tell you what this guy risked his life to get out of me. Breaking through the divine gate, destroying the formation, and letting the upper realm's vitality permeate the entire pugilistic world, the whole of pugilistic world will benefit from it. How dare you covet the divine gate's treasures? Everything belongs to the Holy Church. In a place like Northern Yen, my words are the same as Cult Master Chu's words." Xianghu grinned. "Sure enough, women don't mean what they say. If you take it seriously, your end will be very miserable." Mei Qinglian turned to the Kunlun demon cult disciples behind her and said, "Make a trip to that Zhangla sect. Tell the others in the Zhangla sect that in the future, there will be no more Zhangla sect in the northern Yen Jianghu. Those who want to live, join other gangs. The Giant Spirit Gang or the Drifting Snow City in the extreme north are both good choices. Those who want to be loyal, send them to see their gang master." "Yes." Immediately, a few real Pellet State Kunlun Devil Cult martial artists walked out as if they were executing a trivial matter. Mei Qinglian glanced around. "Now, who else has any doubts?" "No, no. We will do whatever the Holy Maiden says. The sins of the Elysium are too numerous to be recorded. It is a blessing for the underworld to have our Holy Church enforce justice on behalf of heaven." In just a few words, the Changel gang, one of the 6 major gangs, was gone. Who dared to have doubts? Even if you want to die, you shouldn't do it in such a way. It's good that there are no doubts. You are all dismissed. Mei Qinglian waved her hand casually, and the people present rushed out of the hall as if they were running for their lives. Xianghu couldn't help but shake his head when he saw this scene. The Northern Yen martial arts world was completely ruined. There was no one with backbone. Yu Fengwei didn't have backbone. It could only be said that he was blinded by greed. In addition, he became one of the 6 major gangs and couldn't see himself clearly. Of course, this was a good thing for the Northern Yen court because the Northern Yen martial arts world was easier to manage. Thinking of this, Xianghu glanced at Mei Qinglian with some surprise. He knew little about Mei Qinglian. When he saw that Chu Xiu actually sent a woman to the Northern Yen, he was a little puzzled. As a result, it seemed that this woman was really ruthless. Xianghu couldn't help but shake his head and whisper, "Wasp-tail needle, the most." Before he finished speaking, he was glared at by Mei Qinglian. "What did you say?" Xianghu quickly changed his words, "Wasp-tail needle, the most beautiful holy maiden heart. I'm praising you. When I came, His Majesty said that the Northern Yen court will follow the Holy Church's lead. When you want to take action, just let me know." With that said, Xianghu swallowed the last mouthful of banana and hurriedly ran out. Chapter 1301. Compared with the Northern Yen martial world, where Mei Qinglian had to kill people to control the situation, Chu Wuji was more relaxed in West Chu. Although the West Chu martial world was not weak, the World Alliance had merged with the Kunlun Devil cult. The moon-worshipping cult and the Daoist Master Mansion had joined hands with Chu Xiu at the same time. Only the Forgetful Sword Hut could show up. However, the Forgetful Sword Hut was very calm. They did not want to offend Chu Xiu at this time, so they also kept a low profile. Only a small part of the West Chu martial world did not come, and that was a part of the martial arts forces in Sichuan. The land of Bashu was also in the West Chu, but it was the westernmost part of the country. The road there was difficult to travel, so the main forces led by the Tang family didn't refuse. Instead, they asked Chu Wuji to wait for a while, but in fact, they were secretly discussing something. After receiving the news, Chu Wuji chuckled and shook his head. He called Tang Ye over. You should know about the Tang family fortress, so I won't meddle in it. You can take some people with you and untie the knot in your heart. Tang Ye's expression changed slightly, but he still shook his head and said, no need. The Holy Church's plan is the priority. When the Tang family fortress sends people over, we can deal with them together. I will waste too much time going back and forth. Besides, as I said, the past is like smoke. These years, I have been fighting with the hierarch, facing the alliance of the righteous sects, the big Taoist and Buddhist sects, and even the ancient powerhouses of another world. If I'm still fixated on those filthy things of the past, then I'll be the one who can't be seen in public. Chu Wuji laughed and said, it's good that you think like that. But if you don't return to your hometown after getting rich, it's like wearing silk clothes at night. In this life, people should strive for dignity instead of fighting for it. I want my face, and so do you, Tang Ye. Actually, I have vaguely heard about what happened to you in the past. Of course, I didn't mean to inquire about it. Among the Yinma clan, there are some warriors from Sichuan. Don't worry, you have plenty of time. This time, the cult leader is going to attack the Heavenly Gate. What he's playing is not a conspiracy, but an open conspiracy. He needs to gather the power of the entire Jianghu before he can take action. He doesn't need your time. We have roamed the Jianghu for our entire lives. If we can't even settle debts of gratitude and enmity as we please, how aggrieved would that be? Moreover, the sect master also knows about this matter. You coming to West Chu with me was personally ordered by the sect master. Tang Ye couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this, but his eyes revealed a wisp of being moved. Thank you, my lord. When Tang Ye walked out of the door, Yan Bugui was standing at the door waiting for him. I'll go to Sichuan with you later. Tang Ye was flabbergasted. Why are you following me? Lord Chu has already given me enough men. Yan Bugui patted Tang Ye on the shoulder and said, I'll help you kill someone. Yan Bugui was a man of few words. Although he only said 4 words, from his eyes, Tang Ye understood what he meant. He was worried about him. He was afraid that when Tang Ye faced his past, he wouldn't be able to do it. Among the people of the Kunlun Devil cult, Tang Ye and Yan Bugui were the first to know each other. When Chu Xiu was still in the beginner's village, the two of them were already the gold medal assassins of the Heavenly Sin branch. Later on, although no one said anything, both sides knew that they were each other's most important friends. Thinking of Chu Xiu's arrangements and what Chu Wuji had said, as well as Yan Bugui's company, he couldn't help rubbing his eyes. TCH, I say, do you really have to make the atmosphere so emotional? Aren't we supposed to be cold-blooded and heartless people of the devil cult? This doesn't match our identities. Yan Bugui didn't reply. He just carried his heavy sword and followed behind Tang Ye. Half a month later, Sichuan Province, Tang Family Fortress. Shu Road was difficult, it was more difficult than going to heaven. Even though the weakest person brought by Tang Ye was at the real pellet state, it took them half a month to arrive. After all, real pellet state couldn't fly and could easily cross those natural barriers. Looking at the Tang family fortress in front of him, Tang Ye's eyes showed a look of remembrance. He could never forget how he had been chased out of the Tang family fortress like a stray dog. His real name was not Tangya, but Tang Dongting. He was a direct descendant of the Tang family fortress, but he was born of a concubine. His father was the previous owner of the Tang clan castle, Tang Beifei. He was a famous good-for-nothing who had never successfully forged a concealed weapon in his life. He couldn't even learn a fraction of the Tang sect's secret technique, the flying star seizing the moon. The composition of the Tang family fortress was somewhat unique. It was said to be a family, but in fact, for many generations, the Tang sect had begun to recruit hidden weapon masters and some craftsmen who made hidden weapons. They married them and made them part of the Tang family fortress. This way, although the strength of the Tang family fortress skyrocketed and its reputation rose, it also caused the direct descendants of the Tang family fortress to completely decline. So later, the Tang family fortress had a rule. The Tang family fortress lord had to be a direct descendant, but the ones in charge were the elders of the Tang family fortress, consisting of a dozen elders from each branch. His mother was the concubine of the previous fortress lord, Tang Beifei, but he was born with great talent in hidden weapons, so the elders of the Tang family fortress liked him and wanted to make him the next fortress lord. However, Tang Beifei's legal wife, who was also his aunt, was jealous of him and framed him for destroying one of the Tang sect's most precious hidden weapons, the dancing fish dragon. As a result, he was punished by the council of elders and his mother died of depression. His father was useless and did not care about him. In the end, because he was a direct descendant of the Tang sect, the elders were ready to expel him from the Tang sect. But they also found a place for him to go, and that was to let him enter the Ba Mountain Sword sect, which was a place of protection. But in the end, his aunt was still worried, and bribed a disciple of the Ba Mountain Sword sect to harm him. This made Tangya despair, and he changed his name and left Bashu. He wandered the world, and finally entered the Blue Dragon Society. This kind of thing was common in some large families. The only difference was that someone died, and Tangya was still alive. Shaking his head, Tangya's lips curled into a cold smile. He said in a low voice, "The Holy Church has arrived at the Tang family fortress. Hurry up and welcome them." Now that Tangya had entered the true fire spirit refinement realm, his words rang out in the sky above the Tang family fortress, and the expressions of all the Tang family fortress warriors changed. The dozen or so elders of the Tang family fortress gathered together and criticized each other. "Oh no, oh no. The Kunlun devil cult has come in person. This old man has already told you guys. Now that the Kunlun demon sect is making a comeback, Chu Xiu's methods are ruthless. How dare you guys dilly-dally over the invitation he sent? Can you blame me? Who was the one who said that we need to buy time and see if there are any forces in the world that want to resist the Kunlun devil cult? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go out and take a look." Amidst the noise, the gates of the Tang family fortress opened, and a dozen Tang family elders walked out, followed by hundreds of Tang family fortress warriors. The leading Tang family fortress elder, whose hair and beard were all white, had a humble smile on his face. "I did not know that the envoys of the Kunlun devil cult had arrived. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. May I know how to address you?" Tangya said lightly, "I am Tangya, the hall master of the Blood Fong Hall." Tangya was not a hall master before, but after he came to the Daoist, the strength of the warriors under the Kunlun devil cult had soared. Therefore, Chu Xiu asked Tangya to set up a hall alone and become the hall master. Anyway, as long as he did not die in the future, he could reach the heaven and earth metaphysic realm. In fact, Yen Bugue also had the qualifications to become a hall master, but he was not good at management. Therefore, he had been staying with Tangya's Blood Fong Hall. The Tang family fortress elder had a surprised smile on his face. "I did not expect the hall master to also have the surname Tang. This is really fate." Tangya smiled insincerely. "Of course it is fate. My Tang is from Sichuan. I am the same Tang as Tang Zizai, the hidden weapon grandmaster of Sichuan 5,000 years ago. All the Tang sect elders were stunned. Tang Zizai was the ancestor of the Tang family fortress. Was this person also from the Tang family fortress? Among the many elders, a relatively young elder suddenly pointed at Tangya and said, "You are Tang Dongting, the son of the patriarch." Tangya was, after all, Tang Beifei's biological son. Although he was only a teenager when he was chased away, his current appearance was somewhat similar to Tang Beifei's. The fact that the warriors of the Kunlun devil cult who had come with a menacing aura turned out to be one of the Tang family fortress-owned people was something to be happy about. But when they thought of what they had done in the past, they could not bring themselves to laugh. In particular, a middle-aged woman at the back of the crowd had a look of horror on her face. Tangya had a strange smile on his face. "I did not expect the elders to recognize me. It is an honor. But remember, there is no Tang Dongting in this world. There is only Tangya of the Holy Church. By the way, where is Tang Beifei?" The great elder of the Tang family fortress said cautiously, "The patriarch passed away 10 years ago due to qi deviation." Tangya frowned. Given his personality, why would he go and cultivate? Who is he trying to fool? Tell me the truth. The great elder of the Tang clan could only helplessly say, the patriarch did indeed pass away because of qi deviation. However, it was because he cultivated a dual cultivation secret technique. In the end, something went wrong and he suffered qi deviation. This kind of thing was not very honorable, so the Tang family fortress always said the same thing. Trash. Even dying in such a cowardly manner. Tangya spat out. The great elder of the Tang family fortress could not help but say, "He is your father after all." Tangya sneered. "My father? I have seen him no more than 10 times in the past 10 years. Every time he sees me, he looks impatient. Even when I was chased out of the Tang family fortress, he was still having fun with other women." The great elder of the Tang family wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not. After all, he was also aware of what happened back then. Tangya waved his hand. "Alright, I am too lazy to talk about those trivial matters. I am not here today for these things." Tangya's gaze swept across the crowd. "How dare you treat my holy church's decree as fart? No one dares not to come under my holy church's decree. Only your Tang clan fort dares to ignore my holy church's decree. Now, since you did not come, my holy church will come to you and ask you a question in person. Is your Tang family fortress looking down on the holy church of Kunlun?" Chapter 1302. No one dared to ignore the power of the Kunlun devil cult. Now that Tangya put such a big hat on them, all the martial artists of the Tang family changed their expressions. The great elder of the Tang family fort quickly said, "We don't mean that. It's just that the road is difficult, so we need to wait for a few days." Tangya sneered, "Do you think I'm an idiot? I have been in the land of Bashu for more than 10 years. I don't know what the land of Bashu is like. Others arrive in 10 days, but you can't even get there in half a month. Do you really think that the land of Bashu is isolated from the world?" Seeing Tangya approaching step by step, an elder of the Tang family fort couldn't help but stand up and pointed at Tangya, "Tang Dongting. What do you mean? No matter what, you are also a member of the Tang family fort, and your surname is Tang. Now the Kunlun devil cult is threatening the Tang family fort. It's fine if you don't help to persuade them, but now you are helping the Kunlun devil cult to threaten the Tang family fort. Do you still have a conscience?" Tangya opened his eyes and looked at the man. Behind Tangya, Yen Bugue's figure was like a gray stream of light, and in an instant, he had already arrived in front of the elder of the Tang family fort. The elder of the Tang family fort had the strength of the real pellet state, but in front of Yen Bugue, he didn't even have a chance to make a move. Not many of the people present were able to see Yan Bugui draw his sword. All they heard was a loud explosion. Yan Bugui stood still with his sword in hand. The Tang family fort elder had already been turned into a pile of minced meat and blood. The entire place instantly turned deathly silent. Everyone kept quiet out of fear as they looked at Tangya and Yan Bugui with fear in their eyes. Looking around, Tangya said coldly, I am not Tang Dongting, but the Hall Master of the Blood Fong Hall under the Holy Cult. Who dares to point their fingers at me? Are they tired of living? At this moment, everyone present also understood Tangya's meaning. Today, the other party was simply here to take revenge. Revenge for the hatred of the past. The great elder of the Tang family lowered his head and smiled bitterly, Hall Master, it was that woman who went too far in the past. We didn't let you down. Tangya gave a strange laugh, is that so? Didn't you see through that woman's clumsy scheme? Why didn't anyone from the Elders Guild, who claimed to be impartial, stop him? Because you're afraid that if a truly powerful family head emerges from the direct bloodline, it will affect the authority of your Council of Elders. That's why you wish that every generation's family head is trash like Tang Beifei, right? Tang family's first elder said helplessly, but that's a matter between your direct descendants, it's not good for us to interfere. Also, someone spoke for you at the time. The previous chief elder was a direct descendant. If he did not protect you, you would not even have the chance to go to Ba Mountain Sword Sect to cultivate. What about the previous great elder? The previous great elder passed away 10 years ago, the great elder said. Tangya's expression turned cold as he said, since that's the case, then why are you still talking nonsense with me? Do you all think I'm here to avenge those laughable old grudges? Don't worry, I've already gotten over those things. I won't make things difficult for you. This time, your Tang family fortress has disregarded the authority of the Holy Church, so we are very angry. The consequences will be severe. When we attack Sky Gate next, your Tang family fortress will be the vanguard. Didn't you not want to do anything at this time? Very well, there will be a time for you to do anything. The Tang family fortress members' expressions changed. Asking them to fight Sky Gate was no different from sending themselves to their deaths. We can't do that, Hall Master. If we are the vanguard, the Tang family fortress will not be able to hold on. Tangya looked at the Tang family fortress members. You want to protect the Tang family fortress? The group of Tang family fort elders nodded in agreement. Tangya gave a strange smile. Seeing that my surname is also Tang, I'll give you a chance. There's still some time before we attack Sky Gate. In this time, do what I'm satisfied with, and I'll tell the higher-ups. Tangya waved his hand and led the Kunlun devil cult people away. In front of the Tang family fortress, everyone stared at each other, not knowing what to do. The Tang family fortress grand elder yelled at a woman in the crowd, "Bitch! It's because you were so vicious and merciless that our Tang family is in trouble today." The woman was Tang Beifei's wife and Tang Ya's aunt. Hearing this, she didn't give in and said loudly, "If you didn't acquiesce in that matter, would I have done it? Now you're all blaming me." In the crowd, a young martial artist who was dressed in luxurious clothes and looked somewhat similar to Tangya stood up and yelled angrily, "Grand Elder, what do you mean by insulting my mother?" The Tang family fortress grand elder frowned. Insulting? Tang Shixing, if your mother hadn't forced away the talented Tang Dongting, would you still be the Tang family fortress master today? Tang Dongting has been wandering in the martial world for decades, and now he has become a powerhouse of the true fire spirit refinement state. He even became the hall master of the Kunlun devil cult. You trash, you swallowed so many elixirs of the Tang family fortress, but you're not even at the real pellet state. You're trash. Now that Tang Dongting wants an explanation, I'll give him an explanation. From today onwards, you're no longer the Tang family fortress master. Although Tang Shixing's mother was a woman, she had some means, so over the years, she also had some confidence in the Tang family fortress. Hearing this, she shouted angrily, "How dare you!" After saying that, a group of Tang family fort disciples stood behind her. "See if I dare or not." In an instant, the entire Tang family fortress was filled with the smell of gunpowder. On the other side, Yan Bugue followed behind Tangya and suddenly said, "I thought you'd kill all those people." Tangya sneered and said, "If I kill them all, who will work for the leader? Besides, in this world, there are many things more terrible than death. I know better than them what kind of people in the Tang family fortress are. Doesn't the Tang family fortress elders want to protect their power? Doesn't that bitch want to help her son to the position of the fort master? Well, now let them fight among themselves. I didn't say to what extent they fight, it's all up to them. Sometimes, no price is the biggest price." Tangya just said it casually. He didn't care how far they could go. He didn't care about the dirty things in the Tang family fortress. If the Tang family fortress was more united, maybe there wouldn't be too much loss. However, they were not of one mind, so internal strife was inevitable. It was because Tangya knew them well that the whole Tang family fortress would suffer a great loss with just one sentence. At this time, Yan Bugue suddenly said behind Tangya, "Your style of doing things is more and more like the leader." Tangya was taken aback and then said with dissatisfaction, "Why are you scolding me?" In Daliang city of Eastern Qi, after Mei Qinglian and Chu Wuji had settled their matters, Lu Jianghe gathered everyone. Of course, this was not because Lu Jianghe had a problem with his abilities, but because Eastern Qi was too big. There were all kinds of names of the old powers and the new powers that had just risen. It was too much for Lu Jianghe to handle. That was why he only had enough people now. In the hall of a house in Daliang city, there were hundreds of people gathered. They were all patriarchs and sect masters of Eastern Qi. Even Lu Chonglu of the Jianghu sect and Ling Yunzi of the Chunyang Dao sect were there. Looking at the people present, Lu Jianghe coughed and put on a dignified look. He said lightly, "I guess you don't know me, so let me introduce myself first. I am the Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall of the Holy Sect of Kunlun, Blood Sea Demon Lu Jianghe." Everyone started to discuss among themselves, and some of them even had looks of doubt in their eyes. They understood that the person in front of them was the Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall, but why was it Blood Sea Demon? Had the Kunlun Devil cult reappointed the 4 demon lords? Why could a Hall Master become a demon lord? Lu Jianghe coughed again and said, "All right, stop talking nonsense. This is not important. You just need to remember that I am Blood Sea Demon. That is enough." He had called everyone here today to discuss the matter of attacking the Elysium. The Heavenly Gates has done many evil things and broken the rules of Jianghu, and forget it. Anyway, you know that the Heavenly Gates deserve to die. So, when the time comes, all of you must do your best. If you don't, I will deal with you later. That is what happened, and that is what the situation is. Since I have conveyed the message, you may leave now. With that, Lu Jianghe stood up and was about to leave. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Are you trying to fool us like we are 3 years old? He did not even bother to come up with a proper excuse. Lu Chonglu hurriedly stood up and said, "Hall Master Lu, wait a minute. Is what Cult Master Chu said about the Heavenly Gates true?" If someone else had asked, Lu Jianghe would definitely have slapped them. However, it was Lu Chonglu who asked. Lu Jianghe's expression changed. He smiled and explained patiently, "Of course it's true. Didn't you see that West Chu's moon-worshipping cult and the Celestial Master Abode didn't do anything? That's because our cult Master Chu has already reached an agreement with the old Celestial Master and Yi Shaonan to attack together. Even these two believe it to be true. What else is there for you to doubt?" Now that he knew that the old Taoist Ning Xuanji was in the Daoist Divine Palace, Lu Jianghe did not dare to go overboard with the true martial sect. Although the old Taoist said that he only had one life of karma with the true martial sect, who knew whether he was telling the truth or not. It was better to be careful. Seeing that Lu Chonglu had asked, and Lu Jianghe's attitude seemed to be good, someone immediately stood up and said, "May I ask Hall Master Lu, the Kunlun devil cult can ask us to contribute, but we can't send all of our forces, right? Our Zhou clan does not have many people. We can only send about 10 people. Please don't be offended, Hall Master Lu." Lu Jianghe looked at that person coldly and said with a sneer, "Are you trying to fool a fool? After all, you are one of the 9 great clans, and you can only send 10 people? Breaking the Heavenly Gates formation is something that everyone will benefit from. It's fine if your Zhou clan is willing to send 10 people, but those who are unwilling to contribute will have their martial arts crippled. Anyway, apart from the 10 people from your Zhou clan, everyone else is useless." Chapter 1303. Lu Jianghe's sudden change in attitude caught everyone off guard. Chunyang Dao sect's Ling Yunzi stood up and frowned. "Clan leader Lu, you're going overboard. I've only heard of threats to hand someone over, but I've never heard of threats to kill. It's fine if the Kunlun devil cult wants to touch the Heavenly Gate. No one in the pugilistic world will stop them. However, you're forcing others to do the same. Isn't that too overbearing?" Lu Jianghe glanced at Ling Yunzi and scoffed. "I was this overbearing 500 years ago. Ling Yunzi, have you not been beaten up enough by Cult Master Chu? How dare you come out and talk nonsense? Today, I'll teach you what it means to be overbearing." As soon as Lu Jianghe's voice fell, the vital energy around him shot up into the sky. Boundless blood-colored threads surged over and turned into a giant hand, slapping at Ling Yunzi. The pure yang energy around Ling Yunzi shone brightly. Just as he was about to counterattack, that slap affected the qi and blood around his body, causing his movements to slow down by a step. Although it was only for an instant, the slap had already landed and sent him flying. Everyone present had a look of horror on their faces. Ling Yunzi, who was at Heaven and Earth Elemental Enlightenment, could not even take one hit from the other party. Lu Jianghe said coldly, "Remember this clearly. The Saint sect spent so much effort to get all of you here, not to ask for your suggestions, but an order. Now, who else objects?" Everyone present was silent and looked at Lu Jianghe speechlessly. "You've already said that it's an order. How would they dare to object?" Lu Jianghe smiled proudly. Chu Xiu often said that. Now that he borrowed it, it felt pretty good. Lu Jianghe waved his hand, turned around, and left with his men. However, when he reached the door, he turned back and looked at everyone with a serious expression. Just as everyone's heart skipped a beat, wondering what he was going to do next, Lu Jianghe said solemnly, "Don't forget that I am the Blood Sea Demon Lord, Lu Jianghe." After saying this, Lu Jianghe turned around and left with his men. Ling Yunzi struggled to get up from the ground. He was so angry that he was trembling. Lawless. This was simply lawless. What did Chu Xiu want to do? Recreate the ferocious might of the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago? Does he really think he's the overlord of the pugilistic world? Lu Chonglu sighed and said, "Now that Chu Xiu is in the same realm as Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago, there's no second founding master Ning Xuanji in the pugilistic world. If he's not the overlord of the pugilistic world, who is?" However, compared to Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu is still considered good. At least he can leave a way out for the other pugilistic world members. Ling Yunzi's eyes widened. He's threatening us to attack the Divine Gate. Is this considered leaving a way out for us? Lu Chonglu comforted him. Don't be so extreme. Think about it. What if what Chu Xiu said is true? Once the Divine Gate's formation is broken, the upper realm's vitality will seep into the lower realm. Both of us will benefit. Although we're no longer young, we're not too old either. Maybe one day, we can really reach the peak of the realm. Ling Yunzi frowned. Do you believe that what Chu Xiu said is true? Lu Chonglu shook his head and said, I don't, but I only believe that Chu Xiu won't be so senseless. With Chu Xiu's strength and the power that the Kunlun devil cult has now, even if he doesn't make up such an excuse, he can directly order us to attack the divine gate. So, since he said so now, it should be true. Hearing Lu Chongliu's words, Ling Yunzi's face also showed a thoughtful expression. At this time, in the southern Man branch of the Kunlun devil cult, when Eastern Qi, Western Chu, Northern Yan, and Lu Fengxian's people all returned, Chu Xiu looked at the people present and said in a deep voice, announced to the world that 1 month later, we'll gather in Kunlun and attack the divine gate. At this moment, in the divine gate of Kunlun, the 9 divine generals of the divine gate gathered in the main hall, but it was a mess, and they were arguing non-stop. Although the martial artists of the divine gate rarely came out of the pugilistic world, they still had some people on the periphery who had built an intelligence network in the pugilistic world. Otherwise, the divine gate would have been blind, and they wouldn't even be able to distinguish the new forces in the pugilistic world. So, the news that Chu Xiu wanted to attack the divine gate was already known to them, but it was useless. Jun Wuxian had gone into seclusion, and he was the kind that couldn't be woken up. Jun Wuxian's main hall had its own formation. If he went into seclusion, no one would be able to wake him up from the outside world, and they could only barge into the formation. At this time, Lin Songlong was walking back and forth in the main hall. Someone couldn't help but frown and say, Lin Songlong, can you stop walking in circles? I'm dizzy because of you. Lin Songlong said angrily, I don't want to walk either. But look at the situation outside now. Chu Xiu has joined forces with the pugilistic world to attack the divine gate. In an instant, the divine gate has become the target of public criticism. I think it won't be long before the divine gate no longer exists. Even if you want to faint, you won't be able to do so. Someone said disdainfully, the divine gate has existed for tens of thousands of years. How can they destroy us just because they want to? Release all the people in the secret territory and fight them to the death. 2 fists can't fight 4 hands. Do you know how many people there are in the martial arts world of Eastern Qi, Northern Yan and West Chu? Sigh, if we knew this would happen, we should have taken the opportunity when Dugu Weiwei wasn't around to completely annihilate the Kunlun devil cult. That way, the scourge Chu Xiu wouldn't have been left behind. The 9 great godly generals were in a mess, each of them sticking to their own views and saying all kinds of things. And among these people, Shui Wuli was arguing with them, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. He had been waiting for this day. At this time, Diwu Qi Song, who was sitting at the head of the table, shouted angrily, all of you, shut up. When Jun Wuxian wasn't around, as the leader of the 9 great godly generals, Diwu Qi Song could naturally suppress them. But the problem was, what was the use of suppressing them? Without Jun Wuxian, he couldn't come up with any ideas or countermeasures. At this time, Lin Songlong suddenly stood up and said, Lord Diwu, the only thing we can do now is to wake the gate leader up. I will bear all the consequences. The divine gate has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Other than 500 years ago, no one dared to challenge us, let alone invade us. Now that it has come to our generation, we naturally can't let it be destroyed by Chu Xiu. The entire divine gate knew that Lin Songlong could be said to be the most loyal to Jun Wuxian. His words really didn't contain any utilitarian thoughts. Diwu Qi Song sighed and said, now that things have come to this, we can only do this. As he spoke, the 9 great godly generals of the divine gate went straight to the main hall where Jun Wuxian was in seclusion. Lin Songlong gritted his teeth and gathered the earth energy around him. A black dragon circled behind him. Just as he was about to attack Jun Wuxian's seclusion room and forcefully wake him up, the door of the seclusion room suddenly opened. Jun Wuxian walked out slowly and looked at the aggressive Lin Songlong. He frowned and said, why, are you thinking of rebelling? Lin Songlong immediately dispersed the earth energy awkwardly. The next moment, he looked at Jun Wuxian with a face full of surprise and said, "Gate leader, you have finally come out of seclusion. You don't know, during this period of time, shut up." Jun Wuxian shouted at the agitated Lin Songlong and asked Diwu Qi Song, "What is going on? I can feel that you guys are making a ruckus here even when I was in seclusion." Diwu Qi Song quickly told Jun Wuxian everything that had happened in the underworld during this period of time in detail. After listening, Jun Wuxian's eyes suddenly revealed a strong murderous intent and a strange look. The murderous intent was because he really didn't expect that Chu Xiu would dare to attack the Divine Gate. The strange look was because he really didn't expect that Chu Xiu would dare to attack the Divine Gate. Although the words were the same, the meaning was completely different. One was anger, the other was doubt. Since Chu Xiu had stepped into the martial immortal realm, he should know the difference between them. Since that was the case, why would he dare to attack? Could it be that he knew that he was heavily injured? That's not right. No divine general of the Divine Gate could betray him. Even if he sensed the commotion in the Kunlun mountain range, how could he be sure that he was the one who was injured? Jun Wuxian definitely wouldn't have thought that the one who injured him was Chu Xiu. He had never forgotten about the Daoist side. 10,000 years had passed. Although the Divine Gate knew more secrets than the lower realm, in reality, they knew nothing about the Daoist. Diwu Qi Song said with a worried look, "Now, Chu Xiu has begun to gather the power of the entire underworld to attack us. By then, there will be hundreds of forces and more than 100,000 warriors. It will be enough to surround the entire Kunlun mountain. Master, if we don't think of a way, I'm afraid the Divine Gate will have to experience another disaster from 500 years ago." Jun Wuxian said calmly, 500 years ago? Does Chu Xiu deserve to be compared to Dugu Weiwei? They haven't even reached your doorstep and you are already so flustered. Is this what I taught you before? The divine generals of the Divine Gate? Even 9 rats are more daring than you. Diwu Qi Song and the other 8 blushed slightly. But they couldn't be blamed for such a thing. It was really too scary. No matter how confident and arrogant the warriors of the Divine Gate were, they weren't confident enough to challenge all the warriors in the underworld. Jun Wuxian waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about them. During this period of time, all of you will enter the palace where I am to cultivate. Remove all the outer array formations. If Elysium wants to attack them, let them." Hearing that Jun Wuxian was actually going to give up on the spell formations at the periphery, the 5th Qi Song still wanted to persuade him, but Jun Wuxian said directly, "The spell formations that the Heavenly Gates has set up at the periphery are only responsible for stopping some of the warriors who have mistakenly entered Kunlun. Do you think that little bit of power can stop Chu Xiu?" This time, Chu Xiu and the others had set up an overt plot. They had come to their doorstep so brazenly. No matter what kind of trap they had, it would be useless. Since that's the case, we might as well fight fair and square. When has our Heavenly Gate ever been afraid of anyone? Looking around, Jun Wuxian said in a deep voice, "Don't forget, the Heavenly Gates now is not the Heavenly Gates from 500 years ago. He is Chu Xiu, and he is not Dugu Weiwei." Chapter 1304. In the dark hall of the Gate of Heaven, the 9 generals had entered Jun Wuxian's palace to train. In the entire Gate of Heaven, only Jun Wuxian's palace had the densest qi of vitality. Usually, only the 9 generals who had made some contributions were allowed to enter to train. Now that all 9 of them had entered, it was obvious that Jun Wuxian was preparing for them to stabilize their strength before the battle. It would be even better if they could make a breakthrough. However, when everyone else was making the best use of their time to train, Xue Wuli was hiding in a corner, secretly contacting Chu Xiu. Now that Chu Xiu was ready to attack the Gate of Heaven, he naturally had to use Xue Wuli as a nail. When Chu Xiu had contacted him just now, Xue Wuli's face had turned ashen. Fortunately, the thing that Chu Xiu had planted in his mind seemed to be extraordinary, so it had not been detected by the formation in the hall. How is the gate of heaven now? Has Jun Wuxian come out? Chu Xiu's voice rang in Xue Wuli's mind. Previously, Chu Xiu had asked Xue Wuli in the upper world, so his primordial spirit power had been greatly depleted. Now that they were in the lower world, the distance had been shortened so much. Chu Xiu's primordial spirit power could support him to ask more questions. Xue Wuli answered truthfully, Jun Wuxian has come out, but I am not sure if he has recovered from his injuries. However, Jun Wuxian does not seem to panic. He is ready to give up the outer defense and fight us directly in the gate of heaven. And the 9 generals have all entered Jun Wuxian's palace to train. They want to seek a breakthrough in the last period of time. Do you understand the formation inside the gate of heaven? Xue Wuli shook his head and said, I know nothing about formations. Only Zhu Tianxiao, who specializes in formations, understands. Alright, you continue to lurk in the gate of heaven and look for opportunities to act. When the gate of heaven is destroyed, you will be the hall master of the Holy Church. With that, Chu Xiu cut off the connection with Xue Wuli. Xue Wuli looked around and lowered his head. His eyes were filled with viciousness. Don't blame him for being a traitor of the Elysium. In fact, Xue Wuli himself did not have any loyalty to the Elysium. In the heavenly gates, other than the 5th Qi Song, who was second only to the gate master, and Lin Songlong, who had been completely brainwashed, most people did not have any feelings for the heavenly gates. The 9 great divine generals also frequently fought amongst themselves. After all, during the divine general ranking, they would really try to kill each other. There was nothing to be said about the strength and battle prowess of the warriors that were nurtured by the heavenly gates. However, their cohesiveness was too weak. A month later, at the foot of East Kunlun Mountain, Chu Xiu had gathered the elites of his Kunlun devil cult. At the same time, other sects in the Jianghu were also arriving. The Celestial Master Manor, the Moon-worshipping cult, the Forgetting Sword Hut, the Shangshuaying clan, and so on. There were also cultivators from the 3 nations and the outer seas. From bottom to top, there were close to 100,000 people of all sizes. With the current strength of the 3 nations, it was possible to gather 100,000 soldiers. However, this was 100,000 warriors. They were not ordinary warriors who had only tempered their muscles for a few days and knew some external martial arts. They were all warriors above the Khanate realm and had mastered Gang Qi. In ordinary fights between Jianghu people, a few hundred or 1,000 people would be considered a lot. At this time, 100,000 people were here. Even if they were placed in front of the towering Kunlun Mountain, it would still be an exceptionally spectacular sight. However, because these 100,000 people belonged to hundreds of sects, they seemed a bit messy, especially when compared to the neat ranks of the Kunlun devil cult. Chu Xiu stood at the front. Yi Xiaonan, the old celestial master, the Ying family patriarch, and the others were all the same. Yi Xiaonan looked at the peak of the mountain and frowned. Where are they? Chu Xiu knew what Yi Xiaonan meant. What he was asking was that they had all gathered at the foot of Heaven's Gate, but they still hadn't seen anyone from Heaven's Gate. Chu Xiu said, there is no powerful formation around Heaven's Gate. Jun Wuxian can't stop us here. There is a powerful formation at the entrance of Heaven's Gate. Everyone, go up the mountain. In the eastern and western heavens, Zhongxinxiu's Mahasvara has never participated in the disputes of Jianghu. However, his Heaven's Gate is above the entire Jianghu. What we have to do now is to pull down this Heaven's Gate from the sky. Chu Xiu's words were changed with the power of rules. It stirred up a breeze and easily rang in the ears of all the warriors present. Those martial artists who came from ordinary sects, after listening to this, even felt a surge of emotions. After all, this was Heaven's Gate, one of the eastern and western heavens. It was a legendary existence. Now, they were going to attack Heaven's Gate. This made them feel like they were witnessing history. The leaders of the other large sects looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. How did he know about the Heaven's Gate plan? It seemed that Chu Xiu's plan for Heaven's Gate was deeper than they had imagined. It was definitely not something he had prepared on a whim. At this time, at the peak of Heaven's Gate, the fifth Qi Song controlled the formation and opened the door of the Heaven's Gate's secret realm. Groups of warriors walked out from it. Compared to the 9 divine generals, the warriors in the Heaven's Gate's secret realm were not as glamorous. Instead, they looked like beggars. However, they all had a strong murderous aura on them. It was as if they had just walked out of a battlefield. Moreover, these people were very strong. The weakest of them had reached the realm of oneness of heaven and man. There were also many warriors who had reached the true fire spiritual cultivation realm and could compete for the 9 divine generals. They looked at the scene in Heaven's Gate with longing in their eyes. They had only seen this scene once. That was when they were brought to Heaven's Gate. After that, they were locked in the secret realm. They lived in it, cultivated in it, and fought in it. Unless they could stand out among the divine generals and become one of the 9 divine generals, they could only stay in there for the rest of their lives. Looking at the thousands of warriors in front of him, Jun Wuxian said in a low voice, "The Kunlun devil cult's Chu Xiu has united the entire pugilistic world to attack Heaven's Gate. Fifth Qi Song has already told you about this. Heaven's Gate is not afraid of challenges. 500 years ago, Dugu Weiwei was not able to destroy Heaven's Gate. 500 years later, Chu Xiu is still unable to do it. In today's battle, I have released all of you. I am also giving you a chance. There are only 9 divine generals in Heaven's Gate. This cannot be changed. But now, I can choose 18 candidates for divine generals. Other than the fact that you do not have your own palace, you can still move freely in Heaven's Gate. You will also have the chance to enter the pugilistic world. These 18 people will be the 18 people who have performed the best in this battle." Hearing this, the eyes of the Heaven's Gate warriors seemed to be burning. There was only murderous intent and fighting spirit. They had stayed in Heaven's Gate Mystery Land all their lives, so they only knew that only by becoming divine generals could they step out of the Mystery Land and obtain freedom. They did not know who Chu Xiu was, nor did they know how strong the entire pugilistic world was. They only knew that killing people would give them freedom. These warriors in Heaven's Gate Mystery Land did not need to say much. A few words were enough to arouse their fighting spirit and murderous intent. At this time, Jun Wuxian turned around and asked Zhu Tianshao, "Is the spell formation ready?" Zhu Tianshao nodded and said, "It's ready." "But Master, most of the spell formation in Heaven's Gate was left behind 10,000 years ago. Even though it has been maintained in the past, it is inevitable that there will be a certain degree of damage. Moreover, the defensive ability is somewhat insufficient. If there is a problem, only I can control it personally. So I need someone to protect me. First, to prevent sneak attacks. Second, to help me replenish my inner energy in time and maintain the spell formation in case of an emergency." Jun Wuxian nodded and looked at the other 9 divine generals. "Who is willing to go?" Before the others could speak, Shuewuli rushed to say, I am willing to go." Everyone present looked at Shuewuli with disdain. They thought that he had jumped out to protect Zhu Tianshao because he didn't want to be at the forefront of the battle. Although the divine generals of Heaven's Gate did not get along with each other, they still despised such cowardly actions. Jun Wuxian did not react. He only waved his hand and said, "Then I'll leave it to you. Protect Zhu Tianshao." Turning around, Jun Wuxian said in a low voice to the others, "Follow me and fight." At the peak of Kunlun, in front of the Heaven's Gate. The entire Heaven's Gate was covered in pure white snow. However, one could still vaguely see the gate's buildings, which had the style of the ancient age. When Chu Xiu and the others ascended the Heaven's Gate, the Ying family patriarch and the others also looked at the Heaven's Gate curiously. In the past, the Heaven's Gate had been extremely mysterious. Therefore, no one had been able to ascend the Heaven's Gate to see what was inside. Today, when they actually ascended the Heaven's Gate, they realized that the so-called Heaven's Gate was actually not that mysterious. It seemed very ancient, as if it had existed for tens of thousands of years. It was like an ancient relic. Looking into the Heaven's Gate, Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. He said loudly, "Jun Wushen, so many guests have come to the Heaven's Gate. As the host, aren't you going to welcome them?" Chu Xiu's voice did not seem loud, but it resounded throughout the entire peak of Kunlun. It even caused a sizable avalanche. In front of the Heaven's Gate, a faint blue light bloomed. Jun Wushen led the 7 divine generals behind him, as well as the groups of Heaven's Gate warriors, out and stood at the border of the battle. Looking coldly at Chu Xiu, Jun Wushen's voice was as cold as the ice on the peak of Kunlun. "Chu Xiu, back then, should have killed you at all costs. You were lucky that the 7 arrows didn't kill you. This time, you actually dared to come and seek your own death. Do you want to be buried in Kunlun?" Before Chu Xiu could reply, everyone present looked at the group of people behind Jun Wushen and their expressions changed. They even felt some lingering fear and trepidation. They had thought that the Heaven's Gate was very strong, but they had not expected it to be this strong. Chapter 1305. Previously, most people in Jianghu had always thought that Elysium was a hidden sect with few members. Therefore, even though the Elysium divine generals had done many outrageous things in Jianghu, no one had bothered to do anything because they didn't want to provoke these strong people. But now that they had seen so many powerful warriors in Elysium, they were a little scared. Once these people were brought to Jianghu, who could stop them? Everyone present couldn't help but look at Chu Xiu. It was estimated that only the Kunlun devil cult could stop Elysium. Chu Xiu looked at Jun Wushen, and the corners of his mouth suddenly pulled into a smile, a mocking smile. "Jun Wushen, you have always pretended to be very calm and very tough. In fact, you are just a person who bullies the weak and fears the strong. You didn't kill me back then because you didn't want to. That was because you couldn't kill me. You were afraid of Xianxia. You thought that Xianxia was protecting me because of karma, so you didn't dare to touch me. It wasn't easy for you to hide in the dark and use the head-piercing 7 arrows to plot against me. In the end, I dodged it and you were seriously injured by the arrangement left by Dugu Weiwei. Jun Wushen, you think highly of yourself, but in fact, you are no match for Xianxia, and even less than Dugu Weiwei. Now, are your injuries better?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, the expression on Jun Wushen's face changed slightly. Regarding his injury, Jun Wushen didn't suspect that there was a traitor in Elysium. He thought that Chu Xiu was talking about the last time he was seriously injured by the mark left by Dugu Weiwei. "Even if I'm not better, I can still kill you." Jun Wushen turned his gaze to old Daoist master Yi Shaonan and the others and said coldly, "Do you also want to join forces with Chu Xiu to seek death? For 10,000 years, Elysium has rarely interfered in Jianghu affairs. Just based on Chu Xiu's nonsense, are you prepared to die?" Without waiting for the old celestial master and the others to reply, Chu Xiu said, "Jun Wushen, you think too highly of yourself. Is attacking the divine gate equivalent to seeking death? For so many years, your Elysium rarely interfered with the affairs of the martial world, but every time you made a move, you broke the rules of the entire martial world. Besides, you don't have to waste your breath. Sect leader Yi and the old celestial master aren't idiots. Since they're already here, do you think they'll retreat? Rather than letting you take revenge on me later, I might as well kill you first." Apart from the martial arts practitioners from small sects and clans, such as the old celestial master and the others, who had been persuaded by Chu Xiu to prepare to take action, were actually already prepared to fight to the death with the divine gate. The others could retreat halfway, but they could not, because they were too big of a target. If the Heaven Gate wanted to settle the score in the future, then they would basically not be able to escape. Therefore, since they had already decided to take action, even if this path was wrong, they could only go all the way. Jun Wuxian looked around, and a hint of cold murderous intent flashed in his eyes. It was colder than the 10,000 years of ice on the summit of Kunlun. Since you want to be buried on the summit of Kunlun, then fine, I will fulfill your wish. As soon as Jun Wuxian's voice fell, Zhu Tianxiao, who was in the middle of setting up the spirit array, quickly manipulated the spirit array. In an instant, the spirit array's blue radiance flickered and expanded to thousands of feet, enveloping everyone present. In the formation, Chu Xiu and the others were almost unaffected, but the martial artists below the real pellet state felt a cold chill eroding the meridians in their bodies, freezing their internal energy, and even their movements began to slow down. At the same time, when the Elysium martial artists rushed out, the faint blue light merged into their bodies, causing their aura to soar. This scene made Chu Xiu's expression change slightly. He did not expect that the Elysium's first move would be beyond his imagination. In the information that Shui Wuli gave to Chu Xiu, there was no description of the Elysium's formation. After all, Shui Wuli was not proficient in this, and the Elysium's formation was mainly built by the ancient powerhouses. In the past 10,000 years, except for the time 500 years ago, the Elysium had never been broken, so there was no record of the effectiveness of the formation. All those below the real pellet state, withdraw from Kunlun. Chu Xiu's voice resounded in the crowd, and the entire team lost 90% of its people in an instant. With this formation, it was useless to let these martial artists come up. They would only die. At the same time, Jun Wuxian also moved. At this time, Jun Wuxian's injury from the formation hadn't recovered yet, but the power of his attack was still amazing. In an instant, an intense explosion sounded in midair. Jun Wuxian's body was like a falling meteor, streaking across the sky to appear in front of Chu Xiu and the others in an instant, his fist smashing down. This punch was like a meteorite, the powerful power shook the void, and even the snow floating in the air froze at that moment. Chu Xiu's pupils immediately shrunk. Jun Wuxian's injuries had yet to fully heal. Thus, the cultivation that he had revealed should only be between the fourth and fifth heavenly layer of martial immortal. His cultivation should be around that of the Bliss Demon Palace's Yan Beifeng, whom Chu Xiu had fought before. But the problem was that power was power, and combat power was combat power. After all, Jun Wuxian was once an existence of the seventh heaven of martial immortal. His understanding of power and the use of martial arts were much better than Yan Beifeng. Chu Xiu raised the breaking formation in his hand, and boundless sharpness condensed in his hand. When the saber slashed down, the rules in front of him were torn apart, like a huge black hole, devouring all power. The devourer of the seven limits was used. Chu Xiu almost used one of his strongest saber techniques. But before Jun Wuxian's punch, the devourer of the heavens could devour the power of rules, but it couldn't devour the extreme power. With a loud explosion, the huge black hole slashed out by the devourer of the heavens was destroyed, and Chu Xiu was sent flying. But in that instant, there were people attacking from all directions around Jun Wuxian. Chen Qingdi's true fire of inner power burned to the extreme. When the punch landed, it was like a collapsing mountain, striking Jun Wuxian's back. Wei Shuya formed hand seals, and the power of rules swept out. The snowstorm on the summit of Kunlun was grasped in his hand, fused with incomparably powerful demonic qi, and turned into an icy demonic palm, descending from the sky. Yi Xiaonan's moon blade spiraled around her, and she slashed at Jun Wuxian's left side. Wherever she passed, all the energy and power of rules were gathered together, turned into the weakest power, and dissipated, making way for the slash. The Heart Sutra of Mending the Heavens was originally an extreme demonic technique that went against the natural order. It used one's own power to forcibly distort and change the power of rules wherever it passed. It was also an extremely overbearing technique. At the same time, the Celestial Master on the right side formed hand seals, and the summit of Kunlun, which was originally shrouded in snowstorm, suddenly roared with thunder. Thunder execution, heavenly thunder of purple clouds, heavenly thunder of the 9 heavens, and other types of thunder kept changing in the hands of the celestial master, forming a huge thunderstorm that smashed towards Jun Wuxian. Around them, 3 martial immortals and 1 celestial master, who, although not a martial immortal, had already comprehended the power of rules, and was not inferior to a martial immortal, attacked. The few of them cooperated very well, and in the instant that Jun Wuxian repelled Chu Xiu, they had already completed all the attacks. But in the next moment, as Jun Wuxian formed hand seals, the 6 paths of Buddha's disillusionment light will behind him bloomed. The huge will looked real and illusory, and the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation revolved around it, capable of strangling all kinds of power. Chen Qingdi, who was being strangled by the 6 paths of reincarnation, was unable to withstand the power and was sent flying. A trace of blood even seeped out of the corner of his mouth. But there was not the slightest hint of fear in his eyes, only a strong desire to fight. Yi Xiaonan's divine weapon, the crescent blade, was directly cut into several pieces by the 6 paths of reincarnation. The weapon spirit was completely killed, and it was extremely miserable. But Yi Xiaonan's eyes were shining as he looked at Jun Wuxian. This was the realm and power that he had been pursuing all this time. As for Wei Shuya, he retreated again and again, cutting off his connection with the demonic hand. Otherwise, the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation would affect him. Among those present, only the old heavenly master had the most experience in battle. After throwing out a large ball of thunder, the old heavenly master dodged to the side to avoid being affected by the power. Patting his chest, the old heavenly master sighed and said, "I'm already so old, yet I still come out to fight. I'm afraid that among the generations of heavenly masters in the celestial master's abode, no one is more hardworking than me." With just one move, the attacks of the 5 were completely defeated. Jun Wuxian's power was simply terrifying. However, before Jun Wuxian could say anything, Chu Xiu, who had been sent flying by him, immediately used the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. The huge demonic body seemed to be able to support the heavens and the earth. His body pierced through the clouds, and with a punch, the powerful force shook the void and went straight for Jun Wuxian. Magic! Jun Wuxian's eyes revealed a trace of haze. He recognized this magic. To be more precise, if it wasn't for this magic, Chu Xiu would have been killed by his head-piercing 7 arrows a long time ago, and he wouldn't have survived until now, causing so much trouble. From Jun Wuxian's point of view, the law phenomenon was a standard power-type magic. In fact, among the magic, power-type magic should be on the weaker side, because it was just pure power, and the variations were too little. However, the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth mystique had evolved the power to the extreme. When that punch landed, it was as though an ancient demon god was roaring and fighting against the heavenly Tao and all living things. Jun Wuxian's hands formed a seal, and the 6 paths of Buddha disillusionment light destruction will was cast to the extreme. The huge will was raised to the top of his head, and it strangled and destroyed all the power of rules. Be it in the lower realm or the Daoist, there were very few martial skills that could go against a magic. The last move of Chu Xiu's 7 limits, the Heaven Devourer, was like this, and the 6 paths of Buddha disillusionment light destruction will was also like this. This skill was a combination of evil and magic, refining the heart, soul, and reincarnation. Finally, it turned from illusion to reality, and turned into the 6 paths of reincarnation wheel, strangling all things. When Chu Xiu's punch landed, it shook the 6 paths of reincarnation disc and caused it to tremble, causing the entire Kunlun mountain to tremble. However, it also successfully blocked Chu Xiu's mystic power with the power of a martial technique. Chapter 1306. In the raging waves of the East Sea, Zhong Xianxia walked on the waves. Sometimes he went east, sometimes he went south, sometimes he went north, and sometimes he went west. It was as if he was going in a circle. At this moment, he suddenly turned his head to the west, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Karma has changed. The next moment, the red dot between his eyebrows bloomed with a dazzling red light. The red light actually blended into the laws of this world. If Chu Xiu was here, he would definitely be able to recognize what this was. Previously, in the central continent city of the wronged, Chu Xiu had seen the threads condensed from the power of the laws. And now, the power that erupted from between Zhong Shenxiu's eyebrows was actually this kind of thread. It was as if he was the embodiment of the power of the laws. The thread seeped into the laws of heaven and earth. In Zhong Shenxiu's eyes, the scenery between heaven and earth was constantly rotating. Time and space rotated freely, and all kinds of unexpected scenes appeared. In the end, he couldn't even bear it and let out a muffled groan. With a wave of his hand, he cut off the thread formed from the power of the laws. Zhong Shenxiu looked to the west. His eyes regained their clarity, but they were filled with confusion. Karma has become chaotic? He couldn't see clearly, and he couldn't understand what was happening. Zhong Shenxiu stood in place for a long time until a passing shark treated him as food and bit him, breaking his teeth. Only then did Zhong Shenxiu seem to react. He shook his head gently and continued to circle in the East Sea. At this moment, Chu Xiu didn't know that he was being spied on by Zhong Shenxiu. Even Jun Wuxian didn't notice. Jun Wuxian had used a martial skill to forcefully block the punch of the law embodiment of heaven and earth. This kind of strength was simply shocking. But Chu Xiu's emotions didn't fluctuate in the slightest. If one punch couldn't break it, then 2 punches, 3 punches. The power of the law embodiment of heaven and earth erupted to the extreme. After 5 consecutive punches, the 6 paths of reincarnation disc finally shattered. However, the moment the 6 paths of reincarnation disc shattered, the power of rules around Jun Wuxian started to gather. In Chu Xiu's eyes, the crimson power of rules encircled Jun Wuxian's hand and transformed into a crimson dragon spear. It was so hot that even the Kunlun mountain, which was covered in frost and snow, had a scorching feeling, as though it had turned into a flaming mountain. The crimson dragon spear suddenly pierced out, as if it had pierced through space and time, and arrived in front of Chu Xiu in the blink of an eye. Stab, flick. There were only 2 moves, but they displayed the essence of spear techniques to the extreme. Divine ability spear technique, fire dragon lighting the lamp. At this moment, the scorching heat enveloped Chu Xiu. The huge demon god body was sent flying by the seemingly weak dragon spear. At the same time, Chu Xiu's body was instantly set ablaze with intense flames. His inner force and true qi were being consumed crazily. The fire dragon lit the lamp, but where was the lamp? Chu Xiu himself was the lamp. The law embodiment of heaven and earth dissipated in an instant, but the flames were like maggots in the bones, still burning around Chu Xiu's body, as if they would not stop until he was burnt to ashes. Chu Xiu's heart suddenly sank. He seemed to have underestimated Jun Wuxian. To be precise, he did not understand Jun Wuxian well enough. Jun Wuxian had only attacked twice. The first time was when he was facing Zhong Shenxiu, and he had revealed his 6 paths of Buddha disillusionment brilliance wheel. After that, it was used for sneak attacks and assassinations with the 7 nailing arrows. He did not even know how many magical powers Jun Wuxian had mastered, and how strong his power was. Every time he attacked, he was testing the waters, but Jun Wuxian came prepared. At this moment, Wei Shuya appeared beside Chu Xiu, and boundless demonic energy wrapped around Chu Xiu. At the same time, a trace of the power of the rootless sacred flame erupted, and only then did it expel the evil flames of the fire dragon lit the lamp. The rootless sacred flame itself was a treasure of heaven and earth formed from the power of the rules. Although Wei Shuya could only control a trace of its power, this trace of power was enough to expel the power of the rules in the fire dragon lit the lamp. At this time, Jun Wuxian was being held back by Qinqing Di and the other 2. However, the 3 of them were also in a precarious situation. Although Chen Qingdi's physical body was strong enough, and his power was also strong enough, these two advantages were basically zero in front of Jun Wuxian. Jun Wuxian didn't know what kind of secret body refining technique he had cultivated, but his physical strength was above Emperor Chen Qing's. With a casual punch, he was able to send Emperor Chen Qing flying, causing him to vomit blood and be injured. Although the old celestial master was not a martial immortal, his set of thunder was integrated with the power of the rules, and its attack power was no less than that of a martial immortal. However, Jun Wuxian just glanced at it casually, and formed a seal with his hand. It turned out to be the authentic Daoist seal of the 9 symbolic words. The 9 symbolic words in the void trembled, as if it was the sound of the Tao between heaven and earth, and it actually disintegrated in mid-air. On the other side, Yi Xiaonan's heaven-mending heart sutra was performed to the extreme, and the color of the clouds in mid-air had already changed. As he pointed, a crack appeared in the void, and it wrapped around Jun Wuxian. Wherever the crack passed, the rules of heaven and earth had been completely rewritten. Mending the sky himself, and the sky that Yi Xiaonan mended was his own sky. A strange look appeared in Jun Wuxian's eyes. Among the warriors in the underworld, there are not many who can catch my eye, and you, Yi Xiaonan, are one of them. To be able to study a cultivation technique to such an extent, and its power is close to that of a magical power, even in the ancient age, there were not many who could do it. It's a pity that you chose the wrong person and walked the wrong path. As Jun Wuxian's voice fell, the huge demonic shadow behind him burst out. In an instant, the demonic flame was monstrous, as if it covered the sky and the sun, covering the entire peak of Kunlun. Wherever the demonic shadow passed, it split into tens of thousands, filling the crack in the void, and finally condensing into one, rushing toward Yi Xiaonan. 10,000 demons returned to ruins. At this moment, Chu Xiu finally knew what Jun Wuxian's martial arts path was. The path he took was actually the same as Chu Xiu's, incorporating the strengths of 100 schools of thought into one, and pursuing the ultimate peak of fighting. The 6 paths of Buddha's disillusionment light will had the flavor of a Buddhist cultivation technique, the 9 symbolic words were Taoist, and this 10,000 demons returned to ruins was a demonic cultivation technique. Also, his physical body was strong, and he had obviously cultivated a secret body refining technique. Moreover, he was able to survive more than 10 reincarnations in Chu Xiu's 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet. His willpower and primordial spirit were also extraordinarily strong. With the combination of Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic cultivation, as well as countless martial arts, his physical body and primordial spirit did not have the slightest weakness. How similar was this to Chu Xiu? Of course, there was a reason why Jun Wuxian could have this kind of cultivation. The fact that he could master a magical power like the head-piercing 7 arrows in a short period of time showed how amazing his comprehension and talent was. The Elysium was left in the lower realm by the upper realm to guard the gate, so the first batch of Elysium disciples were the elite disciples of the major sections. The cultivation techniques they left behind naturally included the strengths of 100 schools of thought. With these conditions, the path that Jun Wuxian was taking now was normal. At this time, Yi Xiaonan had been surrounded by countless demonic shadows, and was about to be seriously injured. Chu Xiu could no longer care about the consumption of his magical power, and immediately went to help. Apart from himself, Yi Xiaonan was the strongest here. If he was seriously injured, then his side would be in trouble. However, before Chu Xiu could make a move, Yi Xiaonan seemed to have given up on defense, and actually let those demonic shadows penetrate his body, and he was instantly torn apart. But in the next moment, everyone felt that something was wrong. Although Yi Xiaonan's body was penetrated by countless demonic shadows, there was no blood flowing out. Instead, it directly collapsed, and turned into a ground full of colorful beetles. They were densely packed, and looked somewhat horrifying. Yi Xiaonan's figure actually appeared from the other side. He looked at those beetles and frowned. The substitute goo has been completely destroyed. At this moment, everyone realized that Yi Xiaonan had actually used the goo of Miaojiang's moon-worshipping cult. In fact, in the beginning, the moon-worshipping cult was famous for its voodoo. Even now, half of the people in the moon-worshipping cult practiced demonic arts, while the other half practiced voodoo. Of course, most people practiced both. And Yi Xiaonan had never used goo in Jianghu, because his strength was too strong. He was so strong that he could completely crush others with his strength. Why would he still use those unorthodox goo? So many people actually ignored the fact that Yi Xiaonan was the leader of moon-worshipping cult, and that his goo should be very strong. Jun Wuxian was surprised for a moment, and then he sneered and said, "Miaojiang's goo is very interesting. But do you still have a goo to substitute? A goo to block a demonic shadow? Your goo will die, but my demonic shadow will not be destroyed. Now, do you regret joining forces with Chu Xiu and attacking my Elysium?" Chu Xiu said faintly, "Jun Wuxian, you should be the one regretting it. You, Jun Wuxian, are powerful and the best in Jianghu. It's true that you, Elysium's previous leaders, are all selfish people. You left the best cultivation place for yourself and pushed your strength to the peak, but what about the other 9 godly generals? Do you think they can still block it?" Just now, when Jun Wuxian was facing the siege of 5 people, although he dealt with each move according to the situation and did not fall into a disadvantageous position, it was impossible for him to be distracted to pay attention to the movements in other places. At this time, when Chu Xiu said this, he realized that Elysium's side had begun to collapse, and it was a great defeat. When the 9 godly generals faced a single sect before, they still had a great deterrent power, but at this time, when faced with the warriors of the entire Jianghu, they could only be hung up and beaten. Even with the support of the array, the 9 godly generals and the warriors of Elysium could not block it. They were killed all the way back, and could only rely on the innermost array to defend. The innermost array was a defensive array, and it was not so easy to break. But Master Yuan Ji and Chao Shen were already standing at the back, and began to command the people to focus on attacking the weak points of the array to break it. Although they could not break the array in one go, they had already shaken it, and breaking it was only a matter of time. Jun Wuxian looked at Chu Xiu and the others, and his expression did not change at all. "Originally, I did not expect them to be able to block it. As long as I kill you before they can block it, the situation will be broken." Chapter 1307. Inside the Gate of Heaven, Zhu Tianxiao was laboriously controlling the formation. Sweat flowed down his fat face like a stream. The defensive formation of the Gate of Heaven hadn't been activated for thousands of years. The last time it was activated was when Dugu Weiwei came. 500 years ago, Dugu Weiwei had already damaged the formation, but it hadn't been completely repaired. It wasn't that the Gate of Heaven was lazy and didn't want to repair it, but that they couldn't. It was the ancient experts who had built the Gate of Heaven. They had gathered the power of all the sects in the ancient Jianghu to build the Gate of Heaven's formation. Although the subsequent Gate of Heaven's warriors were also quite strong, they certainly couldn't compare to the ancient formation grandmasters. Therefore, although Zhu Tianxiao was controlling the formation with all his strength, he kept retreating. He could feel the formation's power weakening bit by bit. Zhu Tianxiao roared without turning his head, "Shui Wuli. What are you still standing there for? Are you watching the show? Hurry up and transfer some inner strength to me. I can't hold on much longer." Shui Wuli's lips curled into an unfathomable smile. "What's the hurry? How would I know if you didn't tell me? Don't worry, I'm coming." A bloody shadow condensed in Shui Wuli's hand. The gloomy demonic qi and blood qi merged to form a boundless sharp blade. Shui Wuli slowly walked to Zhu Tianxiao's back. The blood-red blade in his hand abruptly pierced into Zhu Tianxiao's back. With a soft, poochie sound, the blade came out of Zhu Tianxiao's heart. Zhu Tianxiao first looked down at the bloody blade protruding from his chest, then turned his head with difficulty to look at Shwe. He said in disbelief, "Why? They were both at the true fire spirit refinement realm. Even if Zhu Tianxiao was only good at divination and formations, and not at fighting, he wouldn't have been so easily ambushed by Shwe. But at this time, all his energy was focused on the tactical formation. He did not expect that Shwe, who was also one of the 9 divine generals of Tianmen, who had no enmity with him, would sneak attack him at this time and place, giving him a fatal blow. The blood-red blade in Shwe hand suddenly erupted, and a dense demonic blood qi instantly seeped into Zhu Tianxiao's meridians, shattering his heart vessels. When Zhu Tianxiao was completely dead, Shwe shrugged his shoulders and said, "Don't blame me, I just took a different path from you. All of you follow Jun Wuxian to the end, but I want to live more freely. Instead of being a nuisance immortal general in the Elysium and having to worry about the ranking of immortal generals all day long, I don't want to live such a precarious life anymore. After today, I will be the leader of the Kunlun devil cult. Oh no, I mean the leader of the holy cult. At that time, I will burn more joss paper for you." Shwe tossed Zhu Tianxiao's corpse to the side. He looked at the core of the formation and scratched his head. He didn't know how to use it. But it didn't matter. Although he didn't know how to set up arrays, he knew that it was difficult to fix them, but it was very easy to destroy them. So Shwe directly exploded with his strongest power and blasted it at the center of the formation. No matter how strong the core of the Elysium's formation was, it couldn't withstand such a powerful attack from both inside and outside. So in the next moment, it directly shattered. At this time, even Master Yuan Ji and Chao Ying, who were in charge of breaking the formation, were stunned. Why was this thing so strong on the outside but weak on the inside? After destroying the core of the formation, Shwe task was actually almost completed. The plan that Chu Xiu had given him was to act according to the situation. He had destroyed the formation and helped Chu Xiu and the others to save time and casualties. Just this merit alone was enough for him to become a leader of the Kunlun devil cult. But Shwe was still somewhat unwilling, or rather, anxious to prove his ability in order to win a good impression in front of his new master. He looked at the Elysium Immortal General's hall behind him and suddenly had an idea. He ran straight in that direction. At this time, on the battlefield, Jun Wuxian had just said that he would be able to kill Chu Xiu before the warriors of the Elysium could no longer hold on. In the end, in the blink of an eye, the formation had already been broken. Without the protection of the formation, the warriors of the Elysium were being killed and forced to retreat. They didn't even have the slightest ability to fight back. This caused Jun Wuxian's expression to become extremely gloomy. He didn't know what exactly had happened, but in his heart, he was constantly cursing Zhu Tianxiao and Shwe for being so useless. They couldn't even defend the formation. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Jun Wuxian, it seems that the people of the Elysium are not as strong as you think. I've long since said that the previous generations of your Heaven Gate's gate masters were all selfish people. The Elysium could not only have 9 immortal generals, if you wanted, you could even have 90 immortal generals. But the previous leaders of the Elysium only occupied the best resources, and even deliberately suppressed the other immortal generals, all because they didn't want the immortal generals to threaten their own positions. In the future, if the previous leaders of the Elysium could be more magnanimous, you wouldn't have fallen to such a state. From today onwards, the Elysium will no longer exist." No longer exist? As long as I am alive, I am the Elysium. As soon as Jun Wuxian's voice fell, the demonic shadows around him shot up to the sky, and the ruin of 10,000 demons was displayed once again, directly enveloping everyone within it. At the same time, the 6 paths of Buddha's disillusionary light destruction appeared behind him, crushing straight towards Chu Xiu. He could also see that among the 5 of them, the strongest was Chu Xiu, and the only one who had mastered the divine power was also Chu Xiu. As long as he got rid of Chu Xiu, everything would be easy to deal with. At this moment, Jun Wuxian, the devil and the Buddha became one, and his power was incomparably terrifying. Qinqing Di, Old Celestial Master, Yi Shaonan, and Wei Shuya were all surrounded by countless demonic shadows, and they were exhausted to deal with them. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and formed a seal with his hand, and a Buddhist light suddenly appeared in his palm. The dazzling Buddhist light shot up to the sky, and the cross-shaped lotus flower bloomed, instantly melting the demonic shadows. A strange look appeared in Jun Wuxian's eyes. The second divine power. This was already the second divine power that Chu Xiu had displayed. For a martial immortal of his level, it was already not easy to master the first divine power. How did he master the second divine power? The ruin of 10,000 demons was melted, and the cross-shaped lotus flower seal collided with the 6 paths of reincarnation disc. The power of the 6 paths of reincarnation kept wearing down the power of the cross-shaped lotus flower seal. He had actually used a martial skill to directly confront the divine power, and he had even blocked it. However, at this moment, Jun Wuxian suddenly moved. His body turned into a black light, as if he had traveled through time and space, and instantly appeared in front of Qinqing Di. No one expected that Jun Wuxian, who had always treated Chu Xiu as his main target, would change his target at this moment. Even Chu Xiu, at this moment, was completely focused on defending against Jun Wuxian's attack, and did not react in time. Jun Wuxian's body shone with a golden light, and on his body, specks of Sanskrit shone. At this moment, Jun Wuxian looked extremely solemn and dignified, as if he was a Buddhist protector. At this moment, Chu Xiu had already recognized the cultivation method that his opponent was using. It was actually the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha's indestructible golden body. To be precise, the indestructible golden body was no longer a cultivation method, but a divine power. Back in the Central Plains, Fa Ming had forcibly carved the indestructible golden body's runes on his body, so he could borrow a portion of the indestructible golden body's power. But now, what Jun Wuxian had displayed was the real indestructible golden body. Jun Wuxian's fist came crashing down, and Qinqing Di did not dodge or retreat. The true fire of the internal strength around his body was restrained, and like a volcano that was about to erupt, he attacked at the same time as Jun Wuxian. In an instant, a powerful force exploded, and the Kunlun mountain range under their feet began to shake violently, and avalanches began to erupt. Qinqing Di let out a muffled groan, and his right arm had already been twisted. Qinqing Di was not a martial immortal, and he could fight a martial immortal head-on because his strength was enough to crush the power of rules that a martial immortal could control. But now, this punch from Jun Wuxian was at the peak of his physical strength, and it was just pure strength, without any rules. How was Qinqing Di going to crush it? When the second punch came, Qinqing Di used his left fist to meet the attack, but his left arm was smashed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Although he was seriously injured, Qinqing Di still did not retreat, and the fighting spirit in his eyes grew stronger. He cultivated the true fire to temper his body, and his whole body had been tempered to be harder than a god weapon. Even without his arms, he still had his legs. At this time, the old heavenly master, who was closest to him, had already reacted. He threw all kinds of thunder in his hand, but when they hit Jun Wuxian, they did not have the slightest effect, and they were all nullified by the Sanskrit outside his body. The old heavenly master stomped his foot, gritted his teeth, and said, "Forget it, this old man has put in a lot of effort today." As the old heavenly master's voice fell, he formed a seal with his hand, and countless thunder talismans shone around him. There were green, red, purple, and blue, and every thunder talisman was different. It even included the countless thunder talismans in the celestial master's mansion, big and small. At this time, the sky was filled with dark clouds, as if there was an innate god emerging from the dark clouds. As the old heavenly master's seal fell, countless thunder talismans shrouded Jun Wuxian. The strangest thing was that the thunder talismans seemed to have turned into a liquid state, and like chains, they wrapped around Jun Wuxian tightly. The thunder water talismans kept exploding, eroding the Sanskrit on Jun Wuxian's indestructible golden body, and finally stopped his last punch from landing. After using this move, the old heavenly master seemed to have lost a lot of his strength. He wiped the sweat off his head, shook his head, and said, "This old man has given it his all, the rest is up to you guys." Jun Wuxian, who was restrained by the thunder water talismans, laughed coldly, and the golden Sanskrit around him lit up, making him look extremely solemn. However, just as he was about to unleash the power of the indestructible golden body to the maximum, and break free from the chains, he suddenly groaned in pain. His face, which had always been calm, even began to distort, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and his aura dropped. The old heavenly master was stunned, and he looked at his hands in disbelief. When did he become so strong? Chapter 1308. Outside the Hall of the Divine Generals, the most magnificent palace in the center belonged to the Master of the Elysium, Jun Wuxian's hall. The chi of heaven and earth there was the densest, even more than 10 times that of the other divine generals. SwordWill had cultivated there for a period of time before Chu Xiu attacked the Elysium, and his cultivation had improved greatly. Usually, other divine generals, except for Diwu Qi Song, were not qualified to enter there. Only a divine general who had made great contributions could enter to cultivate. But now, Jun Wuxian had led the other 9 divine generals to the outside world to fight. The door of the hall was not closed, and the core of the formation had been destroyed by him, which meant that SwordWill could enter at will. Stepping into the hall, SwordWill walked to the deepest part according to his memory, and saw the 9 soul lamps that represented the 9 divine generals. But 4 of them had been extinguished, except for Zhu Tianshao. In such a short time, 3 more divine generals had been killed. SwordWill wanted to touch the soul lamp, but when he got close, he was repelled by the formation. There was a separate formation outside the soul lamp, but it was not for protection. It was to prevent accidents from happening when someone accidentally touched the soul lamp while cultivating. The soul lamps of the 9 divine generals were not SwordWill's target. He was going for Jun Wuxian's soul lamp. Further in, there was a huge throne, gilded and shining with a sense of vicissitudes. SwordWill walked around the throne, and a golden soul lamp appeared in front of him. The flame on the soul lamp was even bigger than the other 9 soul lamps combined. In the past, when he was cultivating in the secret land of the Elysium, SwordWill had heard some senior divine generals talk about the secrets of the Elysium. The Master of the Elysium was very careful. Only when he had a very short time left in his life would he appoint the next successor of the Master of the Elysium and pass all the restrictions and inheritance to him. Therefore, it was easy to cause the new Master of the Elysium to lack prestige. It was recorded in the history of the Elysium that there had been rebellions by divine generals, but they had been suppressed. In one generation, due to the personal preferences of the previous leader of the Elysium, the successor that he appointed before his death was not the strongest among the 9 godly generals. As a result, there were people who were dissatisfied and joined forces with the other godly generals to start a rebellion. In the end, 8 of the 9 godly generals died in that generation, and only 1 godly general, who took over the position of the new sect master, survived. The reason why the Sky Gate sect master who had just taken over could control the life and death of the other god generals was because of this soul lamp. The sect master had also placed a portion of his soul in the lamp, but it was not to prevent him from escaping. Instead, it was to control the other 9 divine generals. So, if I destroy this soul lamp, what will the result be? Therefore, SwordWill began to attack the formation crazily. However, because this was a formation used to protect the sect leader's soul lamp, its sturdiness was beyond SwordWill's imagination. Clenching his teeth, SwordWill's eyes revealed a ruthless look. Since he had decided to pledge his allegiance to the Kunlun devil cult, he had to make sure that his pledge of allegiance was loud and clear. In an instant, SwordWill began to burn his blood essence, and a strong force penetrated the formation. Boundless blood light enveloped it, and with a loud bang, the formation was shattered. Mobilizing the last bit of his qi and blood, Xuewuli turned it into a sharp blade, and cut the soul lamp into pieces. In an instant, a strong wave of the primordial spirit spread throughout the entire hall, and Xuewuli was hit so hard that he spat out a mouthful of blood. The primordial spirit power emitted from the soul lamp turned into Jun Wushen's face, and he looked at Xuewuli with a ferocious expression. He shouted angrily, "Xuewuli! You're courting death." That voice resounded in Xuewuli's mind, causing his scalp to go numb. In an instant, his face was filled with fear. After all, Jun Wushen had been the Sky Gate sect master for so many years. Although Xuewuli had become a traitor in the end, when he saw Jun Wushen appear before him, he still could not hide the fear in his heart. But fortunately, that was only the remnants of the primordial spirit power. After shouting that sentence, it dissipated. Xuewuli sat where he was, spat out a mouthful of blood, and let out a long sigh. This proof of allegiance was enough, and the rest had nothing to do with him anymore. At that moment, in the battlefield, as Jun Wushen spat out blood and was seriously injured, everyone present felt a little confused, even the celestial master. But when Jun Wushen spat out the words, "Xuewuli, you're courting death," Chu Xiu suddenly understood that Xuewuli must have made a move. To be honest, although Chu Xiu had instigated a traitor like Xuewuli, in reality, he really did not have high expectations for Xuewuli. One was because Chu Xiu was used to putting the biggest chance of winning on himself. Simply put, he did not trust Xuewuli that much. Also, Xuewuli was after all a newly advanced divine general, and he was certainly not too familiar with some of the secrets of the Sky Gate. Who would have thought that he would give Chu Xiu an unexpected surprise? Although he did not know what method he had used, he had still managed to injure Jun Wushen. At that moment, Chu Xiu had already seized the opportunity. The formation breaker slashed down with his sword, but there was no trace of knife will. Endless demonic qi condensed in mid-air, and the next moment, the bright moon hung high in the sky. In the endless sharp light, Jun Wushen's figure was illuminated. The clouds parted, the moon shone brightly, and the clear sky reflected the shadow. Feeling the power, Jun Wushen's expression finally changed at that moment. This was already the third magic that Chu Xiu had displayed, and it was such a powerful magic that it made him tremble. Jun Wushen could not care less about the pain in his primordial spirit, and he displayed the indestructible golden body to the extreme, trying to break free from the celestial master's chains of thunder and water. But at that moment, Wei Shuya and Yi Shaonan, who had already reacted, attacked at the same time. Wei Shuya made a seal with his hands, and a thin line of fire condensed in his hands, entangling Jun Wushen. The line of fire seemed to be only as thick as a hair, and even if one did not sense it carefully, one would not be able to detect it. But the power it contained seemed so amazing that it almost drained all of Wei Shuya's strength. This was the power of the rootless sacred fire. Because Wei Shuya had refined the supreme god elixir, there was a trace of the power of the rootless sacred fire in his body. Although it was only a trace, the power he condensed was the same as the rootless sacred fire. It was an incarnation of the rules of nature. That trace of fire easily cut the Sanskrit around Jun Wushen's body, and broke his indestructible golden body. At the same time, Yi Shaonan's heaven-mending heart sutra was used to the extreme. Cracks appeared all over Jun Wushen's body, and he was completely dragged in. He was strangled by the power of space, and the chains of thunder and water also penetrated into his body, causing Jun Wushen to groan. With the three of them joining forces, Jun Wushen was finally injured, and he lost his last chance to fight back. The clear sky illuminating shadow had already descended. The strong saber will penetrated Jun Wushen's body, causing his physical body to be torn apart inch by inch, and a large amount of blood spurted out. In that instant, Jun Wushen let out a long howl, his voice filled with endless pain and ferocity. The cracks spread all over his body, turning him into a bloody man. It was an abnormally terrifying sight. But even in such a state, Jun Wuxian displayed the 6 paths of pagoda disillusionment brilliance will once again, and smashed it at Wei Shuya. The clear sky illuminating shadow slash was a mystic skill that could not be defended against, and could only be resisted with the strength of one's physical body. But Jun Wuxian was the only person that Chu Xiu had ever seen who was able to continue to fight in such a state without forcing himself to hold on. Wei Shuya had not thought of this, and so he was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. Of course, even if he had reacted, it would have been useless. Condensing the power of the rootless sacred flame had already used up most of his physical strength. Turning around and forming a seal, Jun Wuxian used the blood that was flowing out of his body to condense a blood-red spear. The spear was burning with scarlet flames that could burn through the void. Fire dragon lights the lamp. Jun Wuxian, in such a heavily injured state, once again displayed his mystic skill. This time, the spear was aimed directly at Yi Xiaonan. Even Chu Xiu could not dodge the spear of the fire dragon lights the lamp. Even though Yi Xiaonan's divine Mend Heart Sutra was extremely magical, it was useless against such an attack. The power that the divine Mend Heart Sutra controlled was close to the use of the rules of space, but in the face of this spear, it was all extinguished. But at that moment, Yi Xiaonan saw that he could not dodge it, so he pressed forward and formed a seal with one hand, as though he was mending the sky with one hand. Time and space were frozen in that instant. The spear tip of the fire dragon lights the lamp was imprisoned in the void, and as the seal fell, it was completely sealed. Only a mystic skill could resist a mystic skill. Yi Xiaonan's divine Mend seal was something he had already mastered when he was in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Now that he had become a martial immortal, and under the pressure of the fire dragon lights the lamp, his cultivation technique had actually advanced into a mystic skill that belonged to Yi Xiaonan himself. However, there were differences between mystic skills. How could the mystic skill that Yi Xiaonan had comprehended after a temporary breakthrough compare to the fire dragon lights that had already been completed? Although he was expressionless, blood kept flowing down his right arm. His breathing was low, and it was obvious that his arm had been crippled. Jun Wuxian's entire body trembled. He looked at Chu Xiu, whose strength had been drained by the clear sky reflecting shadow. His voice was as cold as a ghost's. Is that all you've got? Do you really think this slash can destroy my physical body? Jun Wuxian's physical body was clearly on the verge of collapse, but it still had an extremely strong vitality. As his voice fell, the blood that flowed out of his body splashed outwards at an even faster speed, but it did not scatter. Instead, it gathered together, forming a blood man that was completely made of blood, and his physical body had already turned into ashes. When Lu Jianghu, who was fighting with the people of Heaven's Gate below, saw this scene, he could not help but exclaim, F***ck. Heaven's Gate actually copied my cultivation technique. Shameless. Chapter 1309. Of course, Jun Wuxian would not copy Lu Jianghu's cultivation method. Although the blood demon power technique was very magical, the Elysium had even more magical cultivation methods. Under the clear sky shadow, although Jun Wuxian's physical body was not completely destroyed like Chu Xiu's other opponents, he had injured Wei Shuya and Yi Xiaonan one after another, so he could no longer use it. However, he immediately discovered the weakness of the clear sky shadow, which was that it could not destroy one's primordial spirit. Jun Wuxian had also cultivated primordial spirit secret techniques before. He was now using his powerful primordial spirit to abandon his physical body and forcibly control his qi and blood. The majestic power of qi and blood rushed into the sky as Jun Wuxian formed a seal with both hands. At this moment, 6 arms appeared on his blood-red body, which gave off the feeling of a Sanskrit cultivation method. However, the seal formed by his hands was the most authentic Daoist seal. It was an authentic Daoist seal that even the old celestial master felt ashamed of himself. 500 years ago, Dugu Weiwei destroyed the Elysium. Now, Chu Xiu wants to do it again. Do you think you are Dugu Weiwei? The Elysium of today is no longer the Elysium of 500 years ago. The Kunlun Devil cult of today is no longer the Kunlun Devil cult of 500 years ago. A strange smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. You are wrong. How do you know that I am not? Before Jun Wuxian could understand what Chu Xiu meant, the 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet in Chu Xiu's hand was already shining brightly. The 6 Paths of Reincarnation glowed with golden light. In the void, the powerful primordial spirit power shook the hearts of everyone present. The moment Jun Wuxian saw the 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet, his expression finally changed. He shouted in shock, "It's you." However, before Jun Wuxian could finish speaking, the 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet directly pulled Jun Wuxian's primordial spirit into it. At this moment, Jun Wuxian finally understood why Chu Xiu dared to attack the Elysium at this time, and why Chu Xiu's strength had skyrocketed to such a terrifying level. It was all because of the Daoist. The impact of the 6 Paths of Reincarnation illusion that he had suffered when the array went berserk was not an accident at all, but was deliberately done by Chu Xiu. Back at the Exalted Divine Palace, Chu Xiu hadn't been able to bring out the 6 Paths Reincarnation bracelet's full power due to the distance. At this moment, he was using the 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet face to face. Chu Xiu did not hesitate to use the full power of his primordial soul, allowing Jun Wuxian to constantly be reincarnated in the 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet. Jun Wuxian's willpower was so strong that it could be said that he was the strongest martial artist that Chu Xiu had ever seen. He had reincarnated more than 20 times, but he was still able to persevere and maintain his state of mind. However, more than half of Chu Xiu's primordial soul power had been consumed. If this continued, both sides would still suffer. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. The illusion in front of Jun Wuxian disappeared, and he was freed from the reincarnation. After more than 20 reincarnations, although Jun Wuxian could maintain his state of mind, his consciousness was still a little chaotic and blurry. But when he felt all this, Jun Wuxian laughed loudly. Chu Xiu, you can't hold on any longer, can you? It is your luck that you can come to the Daoist, but you want to destroy the Elysium. This is your death sentence. 500 years ago, Dugu Weiwei failed to destroy the Elysium, and now it will be the same. Chu Xiu's figure appeared in front of Jun Wuxian, and he raised his eyebrows. Oh, is that so? 500 years ago, I let the Elysium go because I wanted you to continue guarding the passage between the higher and lower worlds. But now, I don't need you anymore. Is there still a need for you to exist? Jun Wuxian suddenly felt that there was something wrong with Chu Xiu's tone. But the next moment, Chu Xiu's appearance suddenly changed. He became the person that the martial artists of the Elysium could not forget and feared the most. Dugu Weiwei. Impossible. You can't be Dugu Weiwei. At this moment, Jun Wuxian's state of mind was completely lost. Although he didn't dare to believe that the Chu Xiu in front of him was Dugu Weiwei, the charm in his appearance was exactly the same as the image left by the Elysium and the mark left by Dugu Weiwei in the past. Now, the Dugu Weiwei that Chu Xiu had outlined was based on the image of Heavenly Soul. Moreover, Tian Hun's image was exactly the same as Dugu Weiwei's. He had even managed to fool the people from the Celestial Deluo, let alone Jun Wuxian, who had only seen Dugu Weiwei's image in the imprint and image. Jun Wuxian's state of mind was extremely tough. He was proud and conceited. Of course, he had the capital to be so. Although Jun Wuxian's strength was unprecedented, he was at least ranked among the previous Elysium masters. In the entire Jianghu, besides Zhongxinqiu, no one else was worthy of his attention. But the only one who could make him feel defeated and even fear was not Zhongxinqiu, but Dugu Weiwei. The one who had left a mark and slapped away all his pride and conceit, causing him to completely lose his state of mind, was Dugu Weiwei. When he saw the scene in front of him, Jun Wuxian's state of mind was completely lost. In the 6 Paths of Reincarnation, it rotated crazily again. But this time, Jun Wuxian was unable to hold on. His spirit was completely torn apart by the endless reincarnation, and his true spirit was shattered. Until the last moment, there was only one person imprinted in Jun Wuxian's spirit, Dugu Weiwei. The blood man, which was supported by the power of Jun Wuxian's spirit, suddenly dissipated with a bang, turning into blood that flowed to the ground. Chu Xiu put away the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet. His face was as pale as a sheet. This battle was really very dangerous. If he had not thought of such a move to break Jun Wuxian's state of mind, it was estimated that in the end, he might have to fight to the point of exhausting his primordial spirit to be able to completely defeat Jun Wuxian. Old Celestial Master sighed and patted his chest. Oh my, this is the last time I will fight in a battle like this. If I do it again, I'm afraid I will die prematurely. On the other side, although Qinqing Di and Yi Xiaonan were both injured, their eyes were filled with fighting spirit, and they even felt that they had not lost out. What these two people pursued was the extreme of power. Fighting with an expert like Jun Wuxian could be said to have benefited them greatly. Wei Shuya walked over and asked, "Are you all right? Is Jun Wuxian dead?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I'm fine. I just used up too much power. Jun Wuxian is completely dead. His true spirit has been destroyed in the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet. Rama's true spirit had been rescued during the destruction of the Sabodhi Zen monastery." From then on, Chu Xiu had become more cautious. Most warriors would die if their physical bodies were destroyed. However, there were some warriors who were special. Their spirit might be abnormal and could preserve their true spirit. Therefore, when Chu Xiu killed people, he first targeted the physical body, and secondly, he targeted the primordial spirit and true spirit. Moreover, after obtaining the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet, Chu Xiu basically did not have to worry about this. With the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet, he could completely destroy any spirit or true spirit. Throwing a handful of elixirs into his mouth, Chu Xiu stared ahead and said in a deep voice, "Attack the gate of heaven. Kill all the heavenly generals of heaven. Leave no one alive." These heavenly generals of the Elysium were all brainwashed by Jun Wuxian. Other than Xue Wuli, who was a newly promoted heavenly general, the rest of them saw Jun Wuxian as a god. Even if they wanted to surrender, Chu Xiu would not dare to do so. Actually, there was no need for Chu Xiu to say it. Lu Jianghu and the others had already led the people of the major sects to attack the gate of heaven. However, the people of Heaven's Gate were rather strong-willed. Among the 9 heavenly generals, for example, Diwu Qi Song and Lin Songlong, even though they knew that Jun Wuxian was dead, they exploded with even more power and began to fight with their lives. Unfortunately, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. They were directly surrounded and killed. Shang Tianliang led the people into the gate of heaven and went straight to Jun Wuxian's hall in the center. Opening the door, he saw Xue Wuli, who was lying on the ground recovering his strength. Shang Tianliang laughed coldly and said, "Oh, there's still a survivor of Heaven's Gate hiding here. Fine, I will send you on your way today to accompany your gate master." Xue Wuli was shocked and quickly shouted, "We're on the same side. We're on the same side. We're Cult Master Chu's spies in the gate of heaven. Kunlun's holy sect, thousands of years. Unify the pugilistic world and dominate the world. Cult Master Chu's divine might is unparalleled and awe-inspiring in the pugilistic world." Xue Wuli was so scared that he started to recite a series of sentences. The other warriors of the Kunlun devil cult were all blushing. He was also extremely afraid. He had done so much, and it was not easy for him to endure until the heavenly gates were destroyed. It was time for him to be rewarded according to his contributions, but in the end, he had been mistakenly killed by his own people. He would die with grievance even if he died. At this time, Lu Jianghu walked in. Xue Wuli recognized him. It was Lu Jianghu who had placed the blood god seal on SwordWill. Therefore, SwordWill immediately said, "Demon Lord Lu, quickly prove to me that I'm really on the same side." When SwordWill called out to Demon Lord Lu, Lu Jianghu beamed with joy. He said to Shang Tianliang and the others, "Don't be so nervous. This kid is on the same side. We were able to break through the gate of heaven thanks to this kid being a snitch, no, a spy." Hearing this, Shang Tianliang waved his hand and asked someone to help SwordWill up and take him away for treatment. When the gate of heaven had been completely broken through and everyone had been cleaned up, Chu Xiu, who had recovered his strength, officially stepped into the gate of heaven. Although the other sects did not leave at this time, they did not tactlessly fight with the Kunlun devil cult for the treasures of the gate of heaven. The moon-worshipping cult and the Daoist master mansion had discussed this in advance. Moreover, in this battle, Chu Xiu had indeed contributed the most. The others had also seen the strength of the Kunlun devil cult, so naturally, they did not dare to fight with the Kunlun devil cult. Seeing that the top sects like the moon-worshipping cult and the Daoist master mansion had given up on the idea of fighting with the Kunlun devil cult, the other sects naturally did not dare to act recklessly. After entering the gate of heaven, Chu Xiu did not first look at the various treasures of the gate of heaven. Instead, he went to the deepest part of the gate of heaven, to the center of the 10 ceiling formations. The things there were the most important, and also what Chu Xiu wanted the most. There was a yang source of the upper mortal realm sealed there. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.